up now?
Economic zone. This is AP News.
Is it up now?
Give me a few minutes. Probably takes a few seconds for it to kind of... Oh, there you are.
Okay, great.
Okay, give me 1 sec. Okay, and Pam Morris-Walton, can you please talk for me?
Jackie Quinn.
Yes, good morning, good morning, good morning. This is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it.
Okay, I can hear everyone on Facebook.
Great. Thank you so much. Pardon me.
Drivers and their female passengers.
Okay, guys.
From the bikes and kills. 7 more suffered injuries, and one of the motorcycles caught on fire. Police tell local media a 51-year-old woman was driving the Toyota and has been arrested on suspicion of impairment. One of the victims was just 17 years old. I'm Jackie Quinn.
The Abbey of Mont Saint-Michel in France has reached a ripe old age. It's been 1,000 years since the laying of its first stone. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I'm Rita Foley, AP.
This is 8:20 a.m. WCPT Willow Springs and streaming worldwide at WCPT820.com. We are Chicago's progressive talk, where facts matter. Now, your WCPT 820 weather update.
From the Weatherology Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Michael Carroll. For today, we'll see partial sunshine with areas of haze, high temperatures working up into the lower 80s. Then for tonight, partly cloudy skies, a low of 63. For Tuesday, a slight chance for some showers and storms developing with upper 70s for high temperatures. Wednesday, we're back to a good deal of sunshine. We'll reach a high temperature of 76 degrees. And that's your latest Chicago weather update. Right now, it's 59.
This is a WCPT Better Minute. During the Civil War, 11% of the Confederate Army was made up of enslaved men forced to join. One of these men was Robert Smalls. Smalls was a deckhand on the Confederate supply ship known as the Planter. During his time, Smalls learned as much as he could about navigating the ship so he and others could escape. And on May 13th of 1862, while officers were sleeping, Smalls, along with 16 others, took the Planter out of the Charleston harbor, navigating through all 5 checkpoints while heading to open waters looking for the Union blockade. Smalls raised a white flag of surrender, letting Union soldiers board the ship, giving them guns, ammo, and documents about planned Confederate attack. Being a wealth of information, Smalls was given the role of the Union Navy captain. Stories like Smalls are one of the many factors convincing President Lincoln to allow free African Americans to serve in the Union Army. This has been a WCPT Veteran Minute.
Hello? 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 It's me. It's you. It's your childhood calling.
It's your childhood calling.
Pick up. I'm calling to tell you something very important. It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
The things that happened to you as a kid, the things you went through, they were not your fault.
And you're not alone.
2/3 of us have experienced what is known as adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs.
ACEs are not our fault. They happen to us, yet they can hurt us for our whole lives.
But I'm calling to tell you that I've got good news. I'm calling because you're grown up now, and you can be in charge. You can be the author of your own story.
Learn how at numberstory.org. Numberstory.org.
You're listening to WCPT 820.
Do we have about 3
because
minutes?
facts matter.
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
From September 15th to the 17th in Douglas Park. Come see all your favorite bands from Foo Fighters, Turnstile, The Postal Service, Death Cab for Cutie, Queens of the Stone Age, The Cure, and so many more. Tickets are on sale at riotfest.org. And lucky for you, WCPT wants to send you. Go to heartlandsignal.com and sign up for the WCPT 820 Club for your chance to win Riot Fest 2023, September 15th through the 17th at Douglas Park, Chicago.
This is a St. Jude moment.
Ashton was a high-level athlete, and in an instant, your world flips. and your healthy 5-year-old competitive cheerleader has a brain tumor. And the physician was like, your best option is St. Jude. Receiving treatment that was life-saving for our child and knowing that that treatment would be of no cost to us was a huge weight lifted.
Learn more at stjude.org.
In the small town of Elmira, New York, a boy was born into an all-American family. The odds of him opening his own clothing store at the age of 18? 1 in 138,000. Excited to be a part of pop culture, he packed for the big city. The odds of finding someone to invest in his vision? 1 in 4.5 million. The odds of him achieving his dream in the fashion industry? 1 in 23 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 68. I am Tommy Hilfiger, and my family is affected by autism. I encourage you to learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
60 seconds, everyone.
Thank
I'm Marcel
you.
Spears.
All right,
Keeping
everybody,
our
let's
global
have a
neighborhood
great
safe
one.
is a tough job. One made just a bit safer with the help of America's brave military dogs. These dogs, who often take the same risks and make the same sacrifices as our human warriors, keep our troops safe by sniffing out bombs and IEDs, locating enemy positions, and bringing a sense of comfort and home to an almost unimaginable circumstance. Yet, when these brave K9 heroes retire, they're not always given the same treatment as our military VIPs, and are too often left overseas. American Humane works to bring home these valiant dogs and reunite them with the people who mean the most to them, their handlers, so they can enjoy happy, healthy, well-deserved...
10 seconds.
To learn how you can help America's four-footed heroes, visit AmericanHumane.org.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Monday, June 5th. 2023. It's a joy to be with you today. Hope you had a marvelous, marvelous weekend. Can you believe the summer is here? It really is. Not officially, but actually culturally. It is. And it's beautiful, 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 beautiful. I hope it's not too hot. You know, we have a lot of homeless people, not just in Chicago, but all around. If you see someone struggling, try to guide them to a police station, to a firehouse, to a library so that they can get cool. Think about that, everybody. I'm Santita Jackson. It's a joy to be with you. I want to talk to you today about the Chicago public schools that were closed. 50 of them. Now, there was a promise that once they were closed, that they would do better after the closing. According to this wonderful reporting from the Chicago Sun-Times, that absolutely did not happen. We'll be speaking with Kurt Hilgendorf from the Chicago Teachers Union about that, about what we can do about that in this new during this new administration. And as we're having more people who are being put in the city, I mean, the opportunity that we have with migrants coming into Chicago is the flip side is this. We might have to rehire those teachers. We might have to reopen those schools. Ooh, how about that? And then let's talk about the Republicans. More and more people are going into the race. What is that going to mean as we're watching more and more Black and Latinos who are supporting Republican candidates? Can this debt ceiling deal be a game changer for President Biden as he seeks re-election? I mean, what do you think? Or, I mean, even though people are not trying to discuss Robert Kennedy, and I will certainly be discussing him and talking with him here as I will be talking with Marianne Williamson. I mean, they are running, and he is polling at more than 20%, even though the pollsters tried not to mention his name, but I saw that happen with Reverend Jackson, too. They need to stop that. Just if you really want to find out someone's opinion, ask them, what they're into. So let's get to some of these headlines, everybody. I want you to call me at 773-763-WCPT. WCPT is my home station, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station at AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars. I love them so much, and I love all of you, over on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel, everybody. Please get over there, Santita Jackson Show YouTube, or the Santita Jackson and Friends page. Andre and Dave Dowling and Kenneth Rush and Robert and Carol from out there in the hills of Beverly. Paula, hey Paula. Joseph Ziegler, how you doing, sweetie? It's good seeing you. We'll be at the convention together July 15th through the 19th, the Rainbow Push International Conference. Hope that you will be there. It's going to be fantastic. We're working on a lot of wonderful things. We're going to have some conversations with some people so we can go through some history. I saw Dr. D. Dwight McKee at Cosmopolitan Community Church over on 52nd and Wabash give a marvelous, marvelous history of how we got here, how Black people got to Chicago, how European immigrants got to Chicago, and on and on and on, and why we are where we are culturally and politically. He was brilliant. He talked for 2 hours, no notes, but he's got it in his head because he studied so much. Just brilliant, brilliant lecture. And we're going to be talking about the movement, too. And Joyce, hey, Joyce, what's going on? And Dave Dowling, sending you all so much love. Robert Williams, everybody call me at 773. Barbara Bacon, Daryl, 773-763-9278. Samantha, how you doing? 773-763-WCPT. I want to hear from you today. I want to know what you're thinking about these schools that closed and the promise that was made to make things right for these kids and these communities. That did not happen. Didn't happen. So I want to know what you think about that. Call me at 773-763-9278. And what about this presidential race? And that's at the top of the headlines today. The GOP presidential field will get even more crowded, and they say that could actually help former President Trump. It's going to get more crowded this week. Former Vice President Mike Pence will launch his presidential campaign. And then we're looking at New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. We're looking at a whole lot of people. And Nikki Haley had her town hall on CNN last night from Iowa. So what do you think about this field? And Tim Scott, I mean, as we're watching more and more African Americans and Latinos who are supporting Republican candidates, what do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. There was a really, really horrific plane crash yesterday. Federal officials are investigating what led to a fatal crash on Sunday involving a small civilian aircraft with an unresponsive pilot that flew near the U.S. Capitol region. The crash occurred in southwestern Virginia after fighter jets were called in to intercept the aircraft, which had 4 people on board. Indeed, when air traffic control called them and got no response, then you send the fighter jets up. You remember what happened to that magnificent call for Payne Stewart some years ago? They kept trying to get a response from the plane, and then because they got no response, they sent the fighter jets, and when they sent the fighter jets up to Payne Stewart's plane, they saw that there was oxidation, so they knew that everybody aboard was dead, so they had to shoot the plane out the sky because it becomes an unguided missile. So this is what happened yesterday. I don't know if they shot it out the sky, but when it crashed, it made a sonic boom, which frightened everybody in the Washington, D.C. region. D.C. is a district, so that's Maryland, D.C., and Virginia. God bless them all, everybody. Hundreds of journalists who work for Gannett, the biggest newspaper chain in the country, plan to stage a one-day strike today during the media company's annual shareholder meeting. The journalists say that Gannett needs new leadership and specifically want shareholders to oust the company's chief executive, Mike Reed. They say he doesn't care. Quote, one bit about a long-term strategy to invest in the company by investing in journalists. You know, more and more journalists are being cut all over the country. And these newspapers are dying. Should they? I want you to call me and tell me about that, too. At least 275 people were killed and more than 1,000 others were injured in India on Friday following a 3-way crash involving 2 passenger trains and a freight train. Now, India has one of the most heavily trafficked railroad systems in the world. Indeed, there's 1.4 billion people there, 13 million people a day take the trains, but they also do not have a good safety record, everybody. It marked one of the worst train accidents in the country's history. We're praying for those people, and then they want to find out what happened. Questions are now being raised about its massive and outdated rail network. If you go to India, you can see people riding through the mountains on top of trains, my gospel sister. It is just a lot, and they've just not invested in that infrastructure. And speaking of which, we need to do that too. It was built more than 160 years ago during British colonial rule, and it has really not been updated. God bless the people of India today. There are a lot of broken hearts there today. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 86 degrees, scattered thunderstorms. In Chicago, 77 degrees, partly sunny. The Nuggets, and the Heat tied at one game apiece. The Heat said, "You are not going to roll over me, Denver Nuggets," even though the Nuggets are looking for their first championship in 47 years. Well, the Heat won 11. The Nuggets won 08. In the NHL, the Stanley Cup Final, the Golden Knights lead that series 1-0, but they'll be playing the Panthers tonight. We'll see what's going to happen. In the WNBA, the Sky 86 yesterday, the Liberty 82, and on Saturday, the Lynx 80, the Mystics 78. In Major League Baseball, the Guardians 2, the Twins 1, the Cubs 7, the Padres 1, and the White Sox 6. White Sox 6 and the Tigers 2. It was a good day for those of us in baseball yesterday. Everybody, of course, we have got our gospel sister, Pam Morris Walton. We love Mr. Walton. He's such a wonderful, wonderful man. He takes such good care of you, and I don't know how he does it, works and does all these things, but he is the man. And and he keeps up with you. It takes a very special man to be married to a woman who's so public and so beloved. I'm very serious. It takes a whole lot. And when people who love you and know you and you're so well known, people walk up to you, hug you, kiss you all the time, and he very gently steps back. And he's so proud. And it just really, it touches me. He's so proud. It's just like he's more excited than your fans are. And so, oh my gosh, I just had to say that. Well, I wanted to give him a special tribute today. We don't give these men enough credit when they do things that are really, really right and good. And because he took care of you and then started trying to take care of Reverend Clay Evans. I mean, that's what he's a nurturer. And I acknowledge that because my father's very nurturing. I mean, it's funny, when I would get sick as a little girl, he'd come to the room and sit with me. And bring me soup and things like that and rub my head and it's going to be okay. I'm like, just let me go to sleep. But I just send you so much love today. How can we get your book and what is the full name of it?
It is 50. Good morning, first of all. Good morning, Santita, and to all your incredible viewers and listeners. It is entitled 57 Days. The Wait for a New Heart sparks a spiritual journey of faith and love. And believe me, I'm happy to be alive. Absolutely. I'm happy to be every day on his wake-up list with Mario's heart. Yes, I am.
God bless you.
I am. And I wrote my story. And it'll be 7 years in August, and I believe God's going to let me see it, and I thank him for it. There was a reason why he let me live.
Absolutely.
He gave me a second chance at life, and I'm so thankful. And thank you for everything that you always do continuously so well.
Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning. And what's the good news? Because I know you got some for me today.
Well, I'm going to step back on something that I touched on back in, let me see, I think it was April, and it was the guardian of your soul. The guardian of your soul. When you look back at all that's going on in the world, it feels easy to live worried and sometimes even be afraid. We watch the news. You just heard Santita, everybody, just give us so much news of what's going on, not only in this city, but the country and the world. We see the sicknesses, the accidents. She mentioned that. We see, even we hear about conflicts. We deal with fears about a lot of things. It was once the pandemic, but now other things are happening around us. If you were on your own, you would have a reason to live worried. You are not in this by yourself. You have a protector, a defender, and a deliverer. The Most High God. The Most High God is the guardian of your soul. When God breathed life into you years ago, months ago, whatever it was, he didn't just put you on the earth and say, good luck, you're on your own, go ahead, do what you like. No, he is your guard. He is guarding you. He's shielding you from trouble. God has a shield around you. He has a shield around me. He knows how to keep harm away. And if harm does come, he knows how to heal you because he sure healed me. He knows how to restore what was taken. Nothing can snatch you out of God's hands. You're in his hands. All right? Remember that.
Amen.
God loves you. You're in the palm of his hands. You're not at the mercy of fate or bad luck. God, who promised he will rescue from every situation, will do just that. There is a God watching over you who will rescue you from trouble. God is right by your side always to protect you. You can live in a place of peace. You can live in a place of faith. He didn't say you wouldn't have trouble. He didn't say that you wouldn't face some things, but he did promise that he will rescue you from your troubles. So you don't have to worry about your future. You don't have to be afraid. God has a hedge of protection around you. Everybody that I'm speaking to. And remember, he is the guardian of your soul. Have a good day, everybody.
I love you, Pam Morris Walton. Your book, and how can we get it? We got to get your book.
Okay, you can get my book if you want an autographed copy. It's PamMorrisSpeaks.com. You just go to the website, PamMorrisSpeaks.com. And you can get an autographed copy. If not that, you can get a paperback, you can get a hardback from, or it's an ebook, or iTunes, or let me see what else that is.
Amazon?
Well, it's a lot of ways you can get it. Amazon.com.
Okay.
Thank you very kindly.
But you know what?
Okay?
Go to your
All right,
bookstores.
57 days.
You will go to your bookstores and ask them to carry it. That's what you do. The secular bookstores and the Christian bookstores. Absolutely. Go and ask them. And because when enough people go in and request, then they will order. And that's important. We need to have some really wonderful bestsellers that give you the good news and that are testaments to survival.
So I got to tell you something before I run away from you here this morning into prayer. I was in Atlanta not too long ago, and I went to Morehouse, and my book is on back order. They have sold out. I went by just to check on them, and they've sold out of 57 days at the bookstore at Morehouse. All right? College bookstore. I went to Nubian Books there in Morrow, where the lady who I donated my hair to, not knowing years later God would donate me a heart. And there my book was on sale.
See, that's it. That's how that works.
That's how it works. So it was a good feeling. I literally bought 2 copies of my book and gave them away while I was in Atlanta visiting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's it.
No, but that's good news. I love you.
It's good news. Okay.
That's good news.
See you
I
next
love
week.
you. Dr. Knight, and I want you to stay with me for a couple of minutes on the other side of the break. But you know, we're now in the throes of summer. I thought we'd kind of get eased into this, but we're not being eased into this. And you know what I'm seeing more of? I'm seeing more people. I know I keep going over this, but I think it's important for us to talk about it. I'm seeing more people with masks, but they're wearing them outside. And they're not wearing them the way, they're not covering their noses. Many of them, and then when they want to speak and be heard, they pull them down with their full hands, not with their pinkies, and put them and let them rest on their chins, and then they bring them back up. I'd like for you to go back over that. Anything else you want to talk about is perfectly fine with me. But just in a couple of minutes before we go to this break, and then on the other side, give us some other infection prevention information. But what about proper mask wearing? Outdoors, chin girdles. That's what you call them, but yeah.
Outdoors, Santita, that's the thing. Like, I'm not going to, we're in summer months right now. I think I've mentioned to you before the safety issues of someone wearing a mask outside, especially a disposable mask, and the potential side effects of that mask being exposed to the sun. So the advice that I would give is not necessarily about wearing a mask outside. It would be wearing it indoors in a closed-in setting, potentially when the air is thick. I will tell you that if I am on a New York subway, I'm wearing my mask, and I know it's hot, but that's a different kind of air that's really, really thick. It has a different type of effect. It does feel like the air isn't moving when you are down there. Mm-hmm. And in those particular instances, exactly what you're referencing, when people have on a mask, they should be keeping the mask, for one, hand washing or hand hygiene, even if that's with sanitizer, before you put the mask on is so important, because otherwise you are transferring the germs that are directly on your hands directly to your face by way of the mask. The mask then becomes a weapon that works against you because it's now contaminated. You then, when you are wearing the mask, must wear it over the bridge of your nose down to the bottom of your chin. The minute that you pull that mask down as a chin girdle over just your neck area, anything that's been on your exposed neck while you are talking to someone else, the minute you go to pull that mask back up over your mouth and your nose, you are then taking whatever contaminants that were on your skin and you're pulling it up directly back over your mouth and your nose, thus giving those germs direct contact. I want to remind people that COVID-19, when a study was done, it shows that it lives on the skin for up to 9 hours. Now, while that is not the only bug that has a negative effect or that it can be out here floating around, it is just a reminder of how vulnerable we can be when we have germs that are on our skin that don't necessarily fight for us and are not necessarily good. And we typically call those transient bacteria because it's not a part of what we call our normal flora, which means that those are our normal, our normal skin, our normal bacteria that will fight for us. And so transient meaning that it's not good and it's on our skin and it can be harmful at times, and it doesn't necessarily belong there on regular conditions. So I want to remind people that when you are wearing a mask, it's important for you to wash your hands before and after using it. And it's also important for you to remove it from ear to ear. So do not pull it down as a chin girdle, but make sure you remove it completely. If you are removing it completely, grabbing it by the front of the mask is an issue.
Everybody. Stay right here with me for a few more minutes. We're talking about these Chicago public schools, 50 of which were closed. The promise was, when they were closed, that they would make things right for the students. That did not happen. We're going to be talking about that with Kurt Hildendorf. We're trying to get Reverend Jeanette Wilson on, too, the head of Push Excel. What can we do to make things right for our children? But I'm going to get a couple more minutes with Dr. Shanina Knight. And I was out this weekend, and people were asking about you, girl. I love it. I love it. I love it. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. July 15th through the 19th, the Rainbow Push International Conference. Can't wait to see you there. Back in just a minute. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Whew. Honey bun, the girl's doing all right. Doing all right. Doing great. Oh, man. Just been, yesterday, I just had a very, very exhausting day. Now, last night, I didn't get enough sleep, but you know what? And the Lord let me sleep today. And I got up, but I was moving much more slowly. But the beauty was I had a lot of things to do today, and I had several minutes to spare. And I just looked up, I stopped, and I thanked God. I said, it's like, have you ever known that you were absolutely late, but it felt like time was being held back for you to get there on time?
Sending Kurt Hilgendorf through?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And the irony of it is that you try to not let it upset you because you saying like everything happens
for a reason
on other look like not on our time or be out of our control.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I've had moments like that, and today was one of those days. It's like everything just got slowed down. And I said, okay. I just thanked God. I said, thank you, because this is not my doing. This is not my doing. You know I'm tired. But yesterday I went to see Dwight McKee, went to hear him speak, and then took my Uncle Mickey over to be with my parents. And that lasted a long time. And so I've been going from 2 o'clock in the morning, and I knew I was not going to get to bed until about 11 or 12 because I needed to see the CNN town hall meeting last night. And I was like, oh, and my mother was like, we'll order you something. I was like, you know what? No, because that's 8 o'clock, which means I'm absolutely not going to get any, after the show, I need to decompress, So, but there is that. But let me just say hello to Kurt Hilgendorf. How you doing, Kurt?
Hey, good morning, Santita. How are you?
Oh, I am doing great. I'm doing great. I was struck by these. I've got Dr. Shanina Knighton with us. She's an infection preventionist. Kurt, she's someone who really needs to be in our conversations with parents and teachers and students. I did not know that was an area of concentration in academia and in the health sciences, but it is. She's got a PhD in it. There are only a few thousand of them, tens of thousands of them in the world for 8 billion people. And just from how you wear the mask, how you stop the spread of infection or prevent infection, how to normalize wellness as opposed to illness. I'd like to connect her to you.
60 seconds, everyone.
Because I think, I think she's brilliant and she's here. She's going to talk for a couple more minutes. But you know what I want you to do when we get on the other side, Dr. Knighton?
Mm-hmm.
Explain what infection prevention is, what your field is. I want Mr. Hilgendorf. He's a big cheese at the CTU. I met him through our current mayor. We love him. And we love Kurt Hilgendorf. How about that?
Well, thank you.
I'm not kidding. I'm very serious.
And very nice to meet you this morning, Dr. Knighton.
Likewise.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I said, no, I want you to know.
10 seconds, everyone.
Them. Thank you so much. Thank you, Devin. Brilliant Devin Andrakus.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am green.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. July 15th through the 19th, the Rainbow Push International Conference. I do hope that you will be there. We're going to be talking about so many issues, including this one, how we make things right with for our kids, with our kids, for our parents, for our communities. When they close these 50 schools, these public schools, they not only closed the schools, but they closed down communities, and it deeply impacted the communities. And the promise was that things would be made right. And it turns out the studies, there's a magnificent series from the Chicago Sun-Times that shows that things were not made right for these students. And now we really have a mess. We're going to be talking with Kurt Hilgendorf about this. But Kurt Hilgendorf, I wanted you, of course, he's the legislative and policy director, does such brilliant work for the Chicago Teachers Union. I'm always trying to make connections, Kurt. And Dr. Shanina Knight and I have been working together now throughout the pandemic. and she's helped us to understand that, you know, masks do come with instructions. And you're not supposed to wear them for 16 hours, for example. You know, they have a shelf life. There's a way that you put them on. There's a way that you remove them. There's a way that you wear them. There's a way that you don't wear them. Hand hygiene, the greatest transmitter of COVID, quite frankly, it's been due to poor hand hygiene. It's not anyone's fault, but she's really walked us through this and how before we had the vaccines and even now, look, what you need to do, because there's nothing that's 100%, and the efficacy on these continue to drop. You got to get your baseline health together. So I wanted her to explain to you and to all of us, because I'm very interested in her working with the Chicago Teachers Union, and then you putting her before our students and our teachers, which helps everybody if we have a sanitary, clean environment. Dr. Knighton, what do you do? What is an infection preventionist?
Yes, so an infection preventionist is different from an infectious diseases specialist or doctor, in that an infectious diseases specialist may focus on, let's say, the pathophysiology of a disease, meaning that they discover, like, what is it? They discover, you know, what does it react to when we're talking about different medicines and different treatments, whereas an infection preventionist focuses on how do we minimize an outbreak, how do we stop something from spreading, simply by understanding what are the best practices and protocols to put in place that people should do. And so it's not managing the pharmacological approach to things or the drug-based part where someone may use an antibiotic. And when I say an antibiotic, that would be for, like, let's say a bacteria. As we know, many viruses don't have a lot of antivirals in order to be able to treat them, as well as different funguses. So what that would look like, for example, is what Santita is referencing, is, let's say, for example, there is an old school building. We would want to assess the air because germs can transmit in the air. And so, for example, looking at the CO2 levels, which could be high, could be an indicator that there's too much of a breath exchange without any fresh air. And so that is going to increase the risk of transmission. Inside of schools, it could be indicating that an educator should be speaking with the student at eye level opposed to talking over the student, whereas droplets can then fall down from the educator directly onto that student. It could mean that if there are shared resources such as shared desks, if students are hollering or screaming over desks and those desks are not clean and someone else has to sit at that desk, then the next time that another student touches that desk, that's a way for transmission. So those are 3 examples that I would share, and ways in which to prevent them would be to make sure that there are certain cleaning practices that are taking place, such as timeouts in order for students to make sure that they're cleaning their desks, making sure that if there are commonly touched surfaces such as rails, that these items are still being cleaned. Unfortunately, we started to see an uptick of cases when it comes to RSV, when it comes to human pneumonia, which seems like a common cold, but it causes difficulty breathing and more trouble in small children. We're seeing an uptick of these cases simply because a lot of the protocols that have been put in place during the pandemic are now starting to fall by the wayside because it's not being treated as a priority that funding should be put towards infection prevention and control. But I remind people, if you have literally survived or made it past the outbreak, if we've made it past something that was an epidemic that could have been a pandemic, it is because a group of people dedicated to infection prevention and control and infectious diseases made sure that those diseases did not make it to the public in order for them to know about it. An example of that would be Candida auris, which just recently started to be on the news radar. But we've actually been taking a look at cleaning protocols and how to make sure that it does not spread for about 3 or 4 years.
Well, it's a whole lot, and that was one of my concerns, Kurt, as we, as the teachers and the students and the healthcare, and, the workers, the entire ecosystem went back into the school system. I said, no one's talking to them about hand hygiene. No one's really talking to them about wearing the mask, when to, when not to, and, how we should communicate with each other. And so I'm going to connect the two of you because she has she has a wealth of information, has been lecturing at Case Western Reserve University, and she's a registered nurse. So just incredible human being, incredibly prepared for a time like this. Dr. Shanina Knighton, thank you. And I'm so glad that you got a chance to meet Mr. Hildendorf today.
Absolutely, and have a great show, Santita.
Sending you so much love. Chicago promised students it would do better after closing 50 schools. That did not happen. That is the headline in the Chicago Sun-Times. What happened? What was promised? I could never really wrap my mind around the closing of 50 schools. I'm a product of the Chicago Public Schools. I know that they're great. And Kurt Hildendorf, so the promise was that we'll make things right. But that's not what's happened.
No, good morning, Santita. Thank you for having me on this morning. I think that was the question you're asking is the same warning that thousands of people across the city issued to then Mayor Rahm Emanuel and the leadership of the Chicago Public Schools in 2013, saying that this isn't going to work. This is going to cause a huge number of challenges, including disrupting the education of thousands of predominantly black students, that this is going to force families to make hard choices that include leaving the city. This is going to create a series of cascading problems that the city is going to have to deal with, all of which came true. And that promise that these students will have better outcomes, which up to that point had never been supported by the actual academic research, is what actually occurred. And that these thousands of students had to deal with challenges for years after this very traumatic event.
So where are we with this now? I'm getting some background noise. I need to have that muted, if we could, Devin. But we knew. What is happening? Because they went through these neighborhoods, and you saw these families who have been devastated. You saw communities that have been devastated by the closings of these schools. Let's start there. What happens when you close the schools?
The school closing is the destruction of a community. It's not just a building. It's actually a whole group of services. It's a whole series of relationships. It's a whole history that people have with a particular location and a particular group of people, and that that schools are anchors of communities. And so when you remove the anchor of that community, you actually create the issue of, well, now I don't have a school. Why am I staying in this neighborhood? A lot of the places where schools were closed were places where there wasn't, people weren't working in the neighborhood. There may not be a grocery store in the neighborhood. And now we've taken the school out of the neighborhood too. What is the point of staying? And that's what we've seen happen.
So are we not counting, as I was reading, I can, because I went to neighborhood schools, and those of us who are back in Chicago or who live in Chicago, we see each other over and over again. If, we kind of, I come from an interesting situation in that a lot of people I went to grammar school with, we went to high school together, and then we went to college together, Kurt. And so we literally have known each other all of our lives. And I remember one time, my brothers were about to lose, Jesse and Johnny are 10 months apart. And so in our grammar school, you started taking classes, I think the 5th and 6th grade, those teachers shared some responsibilities, and 7th and 8th grade did the same. They had this teacher they loved. And one Friday, he was going to be removed from the school and put at another school. He was an excellent teacher. And my brothers were devastated, and they came home crying, and my father was like, what is going on? And he told him. And, he was able to make some calls. Everybody can't do that. I get it. And he called other parents and said, what's going on? Well, we've got to do something about this because they can't remove this teacher in the middle of the school year. This is disruptive to the kids. And I'm just wondering, Is anyone paying attention to this, Kurt? I mean, and what can we do about this now? Because we clearly have a mayor who fought against this. I mean, now we have someone who really understands how this negatively impacts our students and the parents and the whole communities.
I mean, I think what you're describing, Santita, is what every parent wants for their own students and what their own students want. They want stability and predictability. They want your experience of knowing your classmates, not just for while you were in elementary school or high school, but even as you became, you went to post-secondary school. Like, these are the kinds of experiences that people want. People want predictability and stability for their schools. They don't want, that's one. Two is that the research is really clear that if you have a lot of mobility issues in schools where students are transferring from school to school within 1 year, that's really harshly negative to their outcomes, their academic outcomes. And that you have to, if you're going to do some kind of what is a very traumatic event, there needs to be some kind of like actual makeup. It's not just like, well, we're going to send you to a slightly better school, but we're not going to give you any additional resources. But there actually has to be a real effort to make sure that those students are welcome, are supported, and that sense of community is reestablished in the new place. And so you have that none of that happened. What we had was a bad idea executed horribly, and it was a full frontal attack on thousands of black families across the city of Chicago. Like, I don't know how else to say it.
Well, but now they've become condominiums and high-end rental spaces. I mean, they converted these schools into apartment buildings and condominiums. I mean, how does that work?
Right. Well, I mean, I think that was where you're getting at, sort of the real underlying philosophy of this. This was worked on a theory that these schools, that the students in these schools weren't deserving of any additional resources, that these schools were better served to be off of the Chicago public school rolls, and that this was part of a broader program. Remember that the places where these schools were closed were the same places where dozens of charter schools had been opened in the 5 or 10 years prior to the school closings. And so it was an intentional forcing of competition between charter schools and traditional neighborhood public schools on the theory that competition would improve everyone. What we actually saw in practice is that the public schools were the first schools to have challenges. Many of them were closed. Now we have we have charter schools in the same neighborhoods that are seeing the same challenges because the underlying conditions haven't changed. The context hasn't changed. There's still people who, there are still folks, there's too much unemployment in those areas. People need additional work. There's not enough housing stability and affordable housing in those neighborhoods to make sure that there's, that people can stay and thrive. And that's, as your point about Mayor Johnson, that's his entire theory on this. So we actually have to have a broader understanding of how employment, of how neighborhood safety, about how public health and transportation, and about how affordable housing all fits together to support the flourishing of people, and that it's not just about like making sure that the schools, that every problem is put to the schools.
We're talking with Kurt Hilgendorf, Legislative and Policy Director for the Chicago Teachers Union. We're seeing this land grab. I mean, that's what it looks like to me as I look at more and more of these schools. They are being converted as we speak into fabulous condominiums. I mean, you remember the old Harvard St. George School. That was, of course, a private school. Several of my friends went there. And it's now a wonderful condominium in Kenwood. But this is happening all over the place. What are the next steps? I mean, because now we're going to have an influx of migrant workers and their children. I think I see this as an opportunity, Kurt, to reopen some schools, to rehire some teachers and psychiatrists, psychologists and janitorial staff and food workers. I mean, it's an opportunity to, I guess, do a reboot on these places that have been closed because we need more schools, not fewer, I think.
Yeah, I think you have to have a vision that says schools need to be invested in, not to be something skimped on. And we've actually, we were talking with Dr. Knighton before I came on, and hearing her talk about sort of the pandemic controls that need to be in place. Like the pandemic made it abundantly clear to everyone how important stability and predictability in their schools are. And so, as you mentioned, that means that we need to have additional staff like social workers, school nurses, school psychologists, and librarians in every school across the city to make sure that students have what they need. And we think about, in the example of asylum seekers, these are people who have been through incredibly traumatic experiences. Can you imagine being a 6 or 7 year old being detained at the border for some untold amount of time, being part of a political sideshow, to be sent thousands of miles away from where you thought you were going to be, and now you're in a new place where you may or may not know the language, so we need to make sure we have bilingual teachers. We need to make sure that we have bilingual support staff in schools, not just for Spanish speakers, but we have people who have come from all around the world to the city of Chicago, that there are language services for them. We need to make sure that class sizes are small enough so that students can get the individualized attention and support that they need. And we need to be able to know, as you talked about, that when you're in third grade, you know your fourth grade teacher is going to be. You know when you're in fourth grade, you know your fifth grade teacher is going to be, because that's the kind of predictability that actually creates long-term support in a school community that makes gets parents involved, make sure that you see like multiple generations of students coming through one school. Those are the kinds of community ties that actually create long-term success, rather than see, the school closures, which was, basically, like I said before, a full frontal assault on Black Chicago and an experiment that would never be done on anybody else. What we need to make sure is that there's the stability and predictability for everybody.
And eventually it will hurt poor white people. It's going to hurt Latinos. It's going to hurt everybody. It breaks my heart every time I ride by John J. Pershing Elementary School, and it's the headquarters for Aramark. I'm like, this was a school. I mean, you had class sizes that really did not exceed more than 32 students. And if you had 32 students, there were 2 teachers. So by the time many of us got to Whitney Young and other schools, we were academically advanced. And you have a lot of people who came out of Pershing and Whitney Young and Howard and et cetera, who've been very successful. And from a public education. I've got Reverend Jeanette Wilson, who of course is the executive director of the Push for Excellence program. And I would like for you to respond to the fact that the promise to do better after these 50 school closings, that they did not happen. I'm so glad that Kurt Hilgendorf has been able to join us today. But just a quick comment from you. What are we going to do now to make things right for the students, for the parents, for the communities? I mean, as we're now bringing people into Chicago. I mean, I'm mindful of the fact, it hit me this morning, Kurt and Reverend Wilson, that, Governor Abbott is strategically dropping these migrant workers. I mean, in this part of the country, we farm. But guess what? Outside of New York City, that's what they do too. He's not just dropping people in Montana. He's sending them where the work is. And I think we need to acknowledge that. But how do we make things right? Reverend, how do we make things right?
Well, I think there has to be a number of changes. Prior to the closing of the 50 schools, there was a move that did not include restoring some sense of order to the system. Many of the students were chronically truant. When I worked there before 2011, between 97 and 2010, we had spent a lot of time finding out what caused children to become truant, chronically truant from school. That means they miss more than 5 to 10 days of a marking period, of a 10-week marking period. And so there has to be some serious investments in truancy prevention. There has to be serious investments in counseling for students. One of the things that we discovered, many of the students and their families are living in chronic areas of trauma. And so most of the social workers and psychologists are assigned to children who've already been pre-diagnosed with special needs. That means children who come to school every day, never been evaluated as special needs. They're not autistic. They're not physically or mentally disabled. They just live in trauma. There's no one that they can go to say, on my way to school, I stepped over a body. Last night I didn't sleep because of gunfire. This morning I woke up, there was a fight in my house. My parents or someone with my mother was in a disagreement. Or I'm homeless. I spend every day looking for the next bed that I will sleep in. No, I'm not on the school rolls as homeless because I'm not in the street as such. I'm at friends' houses. I'm living in a car with my mother across the street from the school. These are the kind of things that we found out. School resources have to be properly reallocated to support these children. We expect children to function in environments that are just not healthy. In an environment that none of us prior to, the baby boomers and the next generation, we didn't have to live with that. We didn't have this kind of thing. When I went to school and when you went to school, you knew your feeder high school when you graduated from 8th grade. You knew where you were going to go to high school. There was a line between elementary and high school. We had the same teachers every year. Your siblings could say, oh, did you have Miss Day? She's going to require you to do this. When you got to 5th grade, when you had 1st grade, you knew Miss Estridge was the 1st grade. And I can remember my teacher. These kids will not know their teachers. We found out that many times students were truant because, especially in high school, the teachers were not there every day. And so if I got a substitute, why am I going to class? Because there's no lesson plan left behind. There's no continuity of education. So all of these factors play into the fact that from when Rahm Emanuel decided to start closing schools, that was schools along the State Street corridor close to the loop. You can look at the geography of the closings. This was taking the land back because many people had moved to the suburbs, were coming back, and they wanted to live near downtown Chicago. That's why the proliferation of restaurants and buildings in the West Loop and in the South Loop and the near North, that's what all of this has started. And now you have universities expanding housing for faculty and expanding their programs. UIC on the west side, UFC on the south side. Yeah. And so, Woodlawn becomes a prime area for the University of Chicago to expand its footprint.
You got about 30 seconds.
UIC expanded on the west side. So that's what we're looking at. Meanwhile, there's no concern for inner city students. Inglewood is next.
Well, urban America is up for grabs. Reverend Wilson and Kurt Hilgendorf.
I know.
And I think we need to call it the land grab, Reverend Wilson and Kurt Hilgendorf. Call it what it is. Because that's, I cannot fight with a phantom. But when you make it real, Kurt, I know then I can be in the game. I can know what's going on. That's what's happening. And we need to call this what it is. We need education for our kids. If America is going to be competitive in the 21st century, they need more education, less wars. 62% of our budget cannot continue to go to militarism and wars. Our kids need computers. We need internet to be a public utility. We need health care in our schools. You need to find out if you have cavities, if you have asthma, all of that. Those are the things we used to find out in public schools. Once a year, you get tested for everything. They put that little nasty red tablet in your mouth, and you see how you did not brush your teeth that day. So all that's important, everybody. Kurt Hilgendorf, I cannot wait to have you back. I reached out to him real late. It wasn't like I did to you. But when I read these reports, I said, I've got to reach out to Kurt. Because we've got to do something. We've got to get before these congresspersons and our state legislators, since that's what you do. And let's change the policy and make this happen. Let's talk about the Republicans, everybody. And are they going to make a push for the Black and Latino vote? As Sarah Palin said, you betcha. Back in just a minute. Thank you so much, Kurt Hilgendorf. I'm going to send you Dr. Knighton's information.
Hey, great. Thank you, Santita. Thank you for having me on this morning. Appreciate it.
No, I've got to have you back. We've got to talk more about this.
Anytime.
Yes.
Santita, please send me his information so that I can invite him to join us on an education panel at the convention.
Only if he says yes.
He says yes.
Reverend Wilson, please send me the info. Very nice to meet you via the phone this morning.
Don't let her scare you, Kurt.
Oh, she's like, oh, send me the information. I'm like, only if he says yes. I'm not going to have anybody get mad with me. I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, why'd you give them my number? Oh, no, that's like a nightmare waiting to happen.
That's right.
Oh, my gosh, but thank you both. I really appreciate you, more than I can say.
Take care, y'all. Thank you. Good to chat with you this
Sending
morning.
you much love, and I'll copy you both on this text, okay?
Great.
I'll do that right.
Thank you. Sounds good. Okay. Take care.
Thank you. God bless. I'll do that right. No, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Wilson. I'll do that right now while I am here. Because I've met him through the mayor. And are you still there, Dr. Knighton?
She is not.
Oh, wow. She said school was her escape. She's got an extraordinary story. She's the first person in her... Are you still there, Reverend Wilson?
She dropped.
Well, just so that you know, Dr. Knighton, you never know where people have been, and you never know where God is going to take you if you just let God do God's perfect will and work. She's the first person in her family to complete high school, let alone go to college and get a master's and a PhD and teach at university. Can you imagine what her journey is? So when Reverend Wilson was talking about all of the challenges that befall our students, she said, you know, that's me. She was describing my life. And look at how accomplished she is now. I mean, she's a mother, she's a wife, she's a really active member of her community. How many Shanina Knightons are we throwing away because we just don't care? Think about that, everybody. How many are we throwing away? We're throwing away so many people. Somebody's got the cure for cancer out here. Someone who we denied an education. Someone's got that song that's going to lift us. And as we're eliminating the arts from our schools, they're not getting the education they need. Remember, the Jackson 5 came out of public school, and so did the Osmonds. Hey, I don't hate on the Osmonds. They sang cluster chords fabulous. You know, I mean, just really think about that. Think about
Sending Attorney Patillo, Attorney Jones, and Dwight McKee through.
Okay, I can't wait to speak with them. Attorney Jones, Attorney Patillo, and Dwight McKee. Dr. D, how are you?
Hi, this morning. How you all?
It's great hearing your voices. You know what? I came across some articles that I know all the three of you would love on the rising support in the Black and Latino community for Republicans. And the New York Times article, millennials are not an exception. They've moved to the right. So I want you all to talk about what you see with this election season. But sending you all my love today, Attorney Jones, Attorney Patillo, and Dwight McKee. Let me hear each of you speak.
Good morning.
Well, yeah, maybe I should not have you do it all at once. Attorney Jones.
Good morning, Santita.
Attorney Patillo.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, great. I'll speak with you right after the show. Right after. And Attorney Dwight McKee.
Morning, Mark and Patillo. How y'all doing today?
Well, not Mark. Attorney Daryl Jones.
Oh, Daryl. That's Daryl. Hey, Daryl. How you doing, man? Hey, doing good. Doing good. You tried apple cider vinegar?
Oh.
No.
No, he ain't gonna try nothing healthy. Come on.
No, I'm good to go.
Trust me.
Great.
No, he's gonna come up with something kooky before he tries something healthy.
I tried a chicken wing.
Fried, deeply fried. That's right, because it's not chicken soup. Well, you know that's the chicken. You know, I met Dwight when I was 2, okay? So this one I know, and he is a tough one. And his mother tried to legate him to all of us. And I was like, Auntie Lois, oh no. You know you can't do anything with Dwight. Oh, baby, I love my son. Oh, boy, she'd walk up to you and she'd pinch you real hard on your cheeks. Baby. Then she'd call me in the middle of my show. One time she called me because she wanted to make sure I had not split an infinitive. Oh, I love that woman. Oh, God rest her soul. She knows she's trying to get you right from the other side, Dwight. And she knows she's at the right hand of the Lord. She knows ain't nothing that can be done with you. Oh, man. But I tell you what, he was brilliant yesterday. He gave a lecture on how we got here, the European immigrant as well as the formerly enslaved Africans. And it was brilliant, y'all. I'm going to get the link to it and send it to you because it is
60 seconds, everyone.
something that you really need to hear. So, all right. And I'm so glad I got a chance to at least hear most of it. I'm sorry I was running late, Dwight. I had to work yesterday. You know how that goes.
Well, you know, I appreciated you coming.
Oh, I was going to come. And, you know, I told you my mother was going to come too. But she's got so many duties. Well, you know, caregiving is tough. And, you know, my parents have been together 62 years, 62. And, you know, watching my father struggle physically is
10 seconds.
Emotionally tough for her. But, you know, we're hanging in there. That's her guy.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Let's talk about the presidential election. It is upon us, everybody. Who'd have thunk it? It seems like we're still stuck in 2020, but oh no. Time has marched on. We now have people who are running. The race is becoming more fleshed out on the Republican side and on the Democratic side, too, although no one's really trying to talk about it on the Democratic side. That's its own story. But we're going to talk about all of that today. Who do you think are the real contenders on the Republican side? Who can take on Biden if Biden's record is accurately projected? And what about Robert Kennedy? He's polling quite high, even though the establishment's trying to shut him down. That's not happening, y'all. And it won't. This is going to be a very interesting time. But let's talk about these Republicans. Who is strong enough to take on President Trump? Is it Christie? Is it Nikki Haley? I mean, these people are no slouches. Is it Pence? Is it DeSantis? It's not going to be enough just to be tough and pugilistic and maybe even nasty. It's just something else that's going on here, and I think we need to talk about it. And what about the Black and Latino vote? They are more and more voting Republican. What is up? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Let's get to some of the headlines. The GOP presidential field will get even more crowded, according to this CNN report. This week, with some high-profile Republicans set to enter the race. Former Vice President Mike Pence, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, Nikki Haley is already there, the former South Carolina Governor and UN Ambassador, Senator Tim Scott, and on the field is growing. They say that a growing field will help Donald Trump. What do you think? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. Federal officials are investigating what led to a fatal crash Sunday involving a small civilian aircraft with an unresponsive pilot that flew near the U.S. Capitol. In fact, when it crashed, it made a sonic boom. Wow. It occurred in southwestern Virginia after fighter jets were called in to intercept the aircraft, which had 4 people on board. Indeed, it's reminiscent of what happened to golfer Payne Stewart some years ago when air traffic control kept trying to contact his plane. No one responded. The fighter jets were sent up. That's what they do also. They do domestic work, everybody. And they saw that the windows had oxidized, which meant that everybody on board was dead. That's what happened here. God bless their souls, everybody. Hundreds of journalists who work for Gannett, the biggest newspaper chain in the country, plan to stage a one-day strike today during the media company's annual shareholder meeting. They are protesting the diminishing of the newsroom. News reporters are being fired. They're not being hired. They do not feel that they have the support. They want to know about a long-term strategy to invest in the company and indeed in journalism. At least 275 people were killed and more than 1,000 others were injured in India on Friday following a three-way crash involving 2 passenger trains and a freight train. It marked one of the worst train disasters in the country's history. Indeed, this country with 1.4 billion people, which is expected to become the most populous nation on earth, they have more than 13 million riders a day, but this system was constructed 160 years ago at the time of British colonial rule and has really not been modernized. And so it runs about 11,000 trains every day, over 67,000 miles of track. And wow, everybody, let's pray for them and let's find out what happened, everybody. In Chicago, we'll have a high of 77 degrees, partly sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 86 degrees, scattered thunderstorms. Oh, well, now the Nuggets and the Heat are tied at 1 game apiece. The Heat couldn't let the Nuggets run away with it, although they're trying to get their first championship in 47 years. The Heat won 11, the Nuggets 108. Tied at 1 game apiece. In the Stanley Cup Finals, well, the Golden Knights, they lead their series 1-0, but we'll have to see what's going to happen with the Panthers tonight. The Golden Knights will face off against the Panthers. In the WNBA, the Sky 86, the Liberty 82 yesterday, and the Lynx on Saturday 80, and the Mystics 78. In Major League Baseball, Guardians 2, the Twins 1, the Cubs 7, the Padres 1, and the White Sox 6, and the Tigers 2. You know, we've been fighting for you to be independent economically. Well, if you are a first-time home buyer, that is to say, if you have not owned a home within the past 3 years, we need you to call Team Hochberg, everybody. Yes, even in these economic times, it is possible for you to buy a house. They are your trusted local lenders. First-time home buyers made up just 26% of the market last year, down from 34% the year before, and higher numbers in previous years. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are alarmed because, of course, home ownership is the cornerstone of wealth for Americans. So they want to turn these numbers around. And so they're incentivizing all of us by helping us to become first-time home buyers with substantially lower rates. Now, these rates can be raised at any time, so you need to take advantage of this program while it exists. If you are in the Chicago area and the total household income is $105,700 or less, it might sound like a lot, but it might be several of you in your home who bring that income together. Well, and you've not owned a home in the past 3 years, you just might qualify for this program. So call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, so that you can see if you qualify for these amazingly low rates. They're amazing, and they could be lifted at any time. So everybody, please call them today and start looking out for the creation of multi-generational wealth. Remember, homeowners beget other homeowners who beget other homeowners. So what are you going to do? Try and own a home today, everybody. Call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Everybody, more Black and Latino voters are supporting Republicans, according to this Hill story. Are Black and Hispanic Americans abandoning Biden? That's from 538. Millennials are not an exception. They have moved to the right. There's a lot that's going on politically. And now this diverse Republican primary field, they see an opening in 2024 with people of color, but they also just see an opening. They say they're trying to move past Trump. Will they be able to do that? He's still incredibly popular. He's certainly popular with his base. I'm just saying. That's just the truth. So call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. How can Republicans get past President Trump? Will they be able to do it? Can Chris Christie do it? Can Nikki Haley do it? Can Ron DeSantis do it? Can Mike Pence do it? So many questions. What are the answers, everybody? Of course, we have got Attorney Robert Patillo, WAOK Atlanta, and of course, The Roland Martin Show, and of course, he is with us here as well. And of course, on his own show every Sunday from 1 to 4 on WAOK in Atlanta. WOLDC has the privilege of hosting a show with Barbara Arnwine and Attorney Barbara Arnwine and Attorney Daryl Jones tomorrow at 12 noon. You've got to go on there, and you should have been at this lecture yesterday. This lecture with Dr. D. It was brilliant. He was brilliant. We're gonna, as soon as I get the link, I'm gonna put it on my Facebook and on my YouTube and on my website that'll be open in a few days, because you need to see this. You need to understand not just why Black people are here, but how we all got to Chicago and these urban centers. Really, it's the story of America, and it was riveting. He talked for 2 hours, and no one wanted to move. In fact, no one did move for 2 hours. We wanted to hear it all. And so I can't wait for him to make that kind of presentation here. And we'll be doing that sort of thing at the Rainbow Push Convention, but this time we'll be talking about the movement. That's right. He and Reverend and Mrs. Jackson go back almost 60 years. So we're going to be talking about that. But right now, let's start with election 2024. They have a diverse field, Dwight McKee. And is there anyone strong enough to deal with Trump? What do you think?
You asking me?
Yes.
Yeah, there are, but they're just not in the mix. I think that Kenny could go heads up with Trump. I think that Bernie could go heads up with Trump. But they're not in the mix. Jesus said that you can't keep putting new wine in old skins and think the skins won't break. Is that the problem with the Democratic Party is that it does not broaden itself enough to be able to bring in new thinking and new energy. It's one of the things that was so effective about this last campaign, mayoral campaign in Chicago. It was a number of candidates, and people who have no excitement about Lori was excited about Brandon. People who wasn't that excited about Brandon was loyal to Lori, and the people in between. And so once they faced off, what it did was it created enough of a base for Brandon to be able to go heads up with Vallis and to win. But he was able to captivate and organize many of those who were supportive of the other candidates in the race, and it broadened the party. What the Democrats never do is they never bring in enough new energy to broaden the party enough to expand its reach. And so the guys who could have done that, who tried to do that, guys like Reverend Jackson, guys like Bernie Sanders, guys like Elizabeth Warren, always cut off at the knees. And so the party then stays stagnant. So the advantage of having real debates and having guys like Kennedy in, who are not the traditional Democrats, who have new ideas on environment and racism and much more progressive, is that for people who are not that excited about Biden, it gives them a place to go. It broadens the range of the party. And when Biden or whoever emerges out of that runs up against Trump, they at least have a broader base to work with. Whereas what the Republicans doing very effectively is they're putting enough people in play that those who are not the typical Trump fans at least don't have to desert the party to find a place. So a guy like Tim Scott, he may have a total different appeal than Trump, but Trump may be the beneficiary of those people who come in and support him, and he loses the primary.
they may then support Trump because now at least they had somewhere to go in the party.
What say you, Daryl Jones?
Yeah, good morning, Santita. And yeah, it's an interesting analysis, I think, that Dwight just gave with regards to the Republican side. And, I think that your initial question was, if I recall correctly, was, can anyone really stand up to former President Trump at this point in time? And I know of three that already have that seem to have been the most effective. And one was Fannie Willis, one was Jack Smith, and the other was Letitia James. Because those prosecutors and going after Trump, I think, are beginning the process of weakening some of his support. And that's when you started seeing Ron DeSantis start taking these shots at Trump. Nikki Haley last night on her town hall took a shot. So now we're starting to see the shots being taken at him, and the question now will become whether or not they can, turn some of that, turn some of those shots into bringing supporters to their side to support their presidential bids. I had not heard Tim Scott take any shots at all, and that might be, his playbook is to not take shots and try to peel some things away as the prosecutions proceed against former President Trump. But I think that the prosecutions are going to have some impact on some of the Trump supporters, not the rabid supporters of Trump, but some of the more marginalized supporters of him. And I think that the beneficiary may be Tim Scott. It may be someone that's not taking shots at him, but has a clean record. It appears to be a very clean person. And right now, the shots are being taken. Pence, I think, took sort of a minor shot. I'm unaware of a situation in American history where our vice president has run against a former president under which that person has served. So, that certainly will be a piece that's going on, and particularly one that's testified against them before Congress about facts that related during their administration. So there's a lot that's going on that could weaken the Trump allure to the Republicans, and the beneficiary I think will probably be Scott or DeSantis, is sort of as I see that, Cynthia.
Robert Patillo, your thoughts?
Well, no, it's interesting to kind of piggyback on what Daryl was saying, that we have two kind of different primaries going on. On the Democratic side, you have Joe Biden, whose primary challenger is Father Time, and then on the Republican side of the aisle, you have Trump, whose primary challenger is going to be the law. And then everybody else is running to see who comes out on that battle. On the Republican side of the aisle, think about who you have who's declared. Chris Christie, former prosecutor. Nikki Haley, former prosecutor. Ron DeSantis, former prosecutor. They've looked at what Trump is up against, and they've made the calculus. Trump's going to jail. And that's the only reason that you're seeing people like Asa Hutchinson and Tim Scott hop into this race. Do you think deep down they believe they can beat Donald Trump in a head-to-head battle when they're polling at 1%? None of these people think they're going to be running against Trump. People, they tell you all kinds of stuff, but follow what people do. Just like with the Fox News tapes where they were saying the election was stolen, then you find out in the text message they didn't believe any of that. All of these people have looked at the evidence against Trump, and they realize he's going to be either on trial or in jail during the 2024 race. And that's why they don't fear him the way they feared him before, because they know they can't beat him in a head-to-head battle. So whereas Trump right now is still the leader and the head of the Republican Party, they are all simply biding their time, trying to avoid too much controversy, and trying to be the clear alternative for when the trials begin, because the Manhattan trial begins March of 2024. More than likely, Georgia indictments will be coming down over the summer, and we'll have a summer trial this time next year. The Jack Smith investigation with those tapes that have been released, with Trump basically saying, I have secret documents on an attack on Iran, and now saying, well, we lost the secret documents on the attack on Iran. Trump's going to jail. So let's not mince words, and that's the only reason that you're seeing this expansive field. And with that, we have to start looking at who would be an actual alternative. Ron DeSantis is proving he is not ready for prime time. There are a lot of things that play in Florida that don't play nationally. And let's remember that if it wasn't for Andrew Gillum losing by, 3 points in 2018, the Ron DeSantis phenomenon never happened. Ron DeSantis then won re-election over Charlie Crist, the young, inspirational, progressive voice of Florida. No, Charlie Crist is just like when they ran Terry McAuliffe in Virginia, an old name and an old voice from the 90s that nobody asked for and that nobody wanted. So Ron DeSantis has never really been challenged electorally. And because he runs Florida for Iron Fist, he's never been challenged politically. And what we've seen thus far is a candidate who is not ready for prime time will faux pas after faux pas in his rollout. Then you get to the entire list of completely forgettable Republicans in the field. Now, no one believes Tim Scott's going to win. Nobody believes Nikki Haley is going to win. Nobody believes Asa Hutchinson is going to win. And I think more than likely the Republican alternative to Trump is not in the race yet. And we're going to see this field continue to expand out. And more than likely a couple of dark horses will get it who are going to catch the party by storm. And there was a day and time where they used to say Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. And that is completely flipped around now, where Republicans are the ones who fall in love with these younger or outside voices. There's no longer, the oldest, whitest guy in the room becomes the Republican nominee. That's what Democrats do now. And I think we haven't seen yet the Republican who's going to actually be on the ballot to challenge Biden.
What do you think, everybody? Call me at 773. 763-9278, 773-763. WCPT. Who do you have in this race? What do you think is going to happen? I mean, can you count Tim Scott out already? Do you think that's the thing to do? Why do you count him out already? I've got less than a minute.
Tim Scott is running on a platform of white people are nice to me. And until he can actually put some kind of...
Okay, where's the mute button? Where is it? Where's my mute? Where is it?
Tim Scott can put some kind of policy around that or some kind of explanation for why he's running, other than every single interview saying, I don't know why they say the Republicans are racist. They ain't racist to me. They good to me. I'm tired of hearing that. What's your plan on health care? What's your plan on education? You have to run on something besides white people are nice to me. And until he can get past that hurdle, I don't see him going anywhere.
Oh, I cannot wait to hear what Dwight and Dr. D and go Dwight. I got 30 seconds, really 30.
Well, if their strategy, Patillo is brilliant as always, but if their strategy is that Donald Trump is going to jail, that's not a workable strategy if he does not go to jail. If you bet the bank on that and he don't go to jail, what's your follow-up strategy? And the sad part of it is Donald Trump can go to jail and still be the president and then pardon himself. And so there has to be more on their side.
Oh, gosh.
Than they just count on Donald Trump to go to jail. That one ain't gonna fly.
And he has enough moxie. He would pardon himself from jail and walk out and wave and have a big party.
And pardon the jailers.
Oh my gosh. And they applaud him. We'll be back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Oh, help me heavens. 773-763-WCPT. Why did I get this crazy panel today? I mean, Daryl, Dwight, and Robert. What have I done, Lord? What have I done? And Devin. Oh, my gosh. Call me at 773-763-9278 and join a Rainbow Push. Get on over there. We are going to have all these guys going to be at our convention, and we're going to have some wonderful conversations with them. You don't want to miss it. 773-763-9278, July 15th through the 19th, Rainbow Push Convention, and I'm going to get the hotel information for everybody so that you all can come on in, because guess what? My birthday falls in the middle of it. Hey, and yes, I'm going to celebrate. Cha-cha. Back in just a minute. Oh, wow. You all, y'all are too much. I mean, really. What did I do to deserve this? What did I do to deserve this? Oh,
But Santita, if you notice, every time since Tim Scott's done his rollout, every interview, the only thing they ask him, are Republicans racist? They ain't racist. They good to me. And I'm just trying to figure out what the hell is your policy on transportation? How are you going to fix the highways? It's been 14 years since Obamacare. What's your plan on health care? I know they're nice to you. It's the Democrats who are the real racists. It sounds like Alan Keyes from 20 years ago. It's the same damn race.
Oh, gosh. You guys, y'all are too much. Really. Really, really, really. Well, but do you think he can run on that? I mean, what do you think is going to happen when the culture wars, become more prominent? In this.
When the culture wars start, when the culture wars start, they're going to start asking why he's a 58-year-old man who's never been married, doesn't have any children, and never had a girlfriend.
Oh. Are you sure he's not having? Child. Hello?
Robert. Yes, sir.
That was cold-blooded. But I don't think he's running to be the president. I think he's running to be on the ticket or to become a cabinet member. I think he's running the same way the last Negro ran, the doctor, what's his name, that became Secretary of HUD.
Oh, Ben Carson.
Ben
Carson. I think he's running for visibility and for proximity. Knowing he can't win, but at least he can find a place of prominence. Whether it's the vice presidential nomination to offset the black vice president that Biden has, or Sister Harris, or he's running for a major cabinet position that he can then build his own base around. I don't think he has any belief that he could ever win. But the fact that white people treat him so nicely does say a couple things about him. And that is that he understands the science of how you deal with white people for them to like you, because that's not automatic. That's a science. You got to know what to say, what not to say, what jig to do, what jig not to do. I mean, you got to go to school board to learn how to do that.
And think about how much money you have to spend on tap shoes and banjos.
Oh my God.
60 seconds, everyone.
You can laugh, Devin. It's okay. Oh, man. Oh. Tap shoes and banjos? Are you serious right now? Yes. Oh. Oh, my God.
They made a nice living with that one leg and that tap shoe.
Don't make him peg leg baits. Don't do that. Y'all too much. A peg leg didn't tap dance.
10 seconds.
Oh, man. Oh.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. Yes, we can. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world. I am breathing.
Oh boy. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. If you are not on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show channel, if you are not on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and I'm even sharing it on Reverend Jackson's page, you are missing big fun during the break. Although I wish I could hit that mute. Poor Robert Patillo is going in on Senator Tim Scott. Yikes. Oh, may I forever be on your good side. And of course, the referee, of course, is Attorney Darrell Jones. So balanced. We love Darrell. And then, of course, Dr. D egging Robert on. Dwight McKee, everyone, he gave a brilliant lecture yesterday on how we all got to Chicago and how we really got to America. I cannot wait till I can post it. I'm going to reach out today to Gregory Gay. Thank you, Gregory Gay, for planting that seed so that it could happen, because really, we did not move for 2 hours. This was a brilliant, brilliant lecture. It will help you to understand why we are who we are, where we are, and where we are probably going right now. And when you think about it, only 15% of the world are landowners. Something about that is out of balance, don't you think? Just think about that. He kind of helped us to understand why that is so in 2023. That's right. 85% of the world don't own land, but 15% of the world do. That's a system that's been in place for quite a while. He walked us through that, everybody. And we will never be the same. So let's get to the election. You are going in on Tim Scott, Robert Patillo. And why do you think it's so funny, Dwight? Let me start with you, Dwight. You are terrible, because you are just egging him on, you awful person.
Patillo got his own style, and you cut with a razor. He don't cut with a knife. Did
you say a razor or a laser?
You bleed as much. But the cut is nasty, but you do bleed as much. I think that the Democrats really are making a big mistake by locking these new voices and these new thinkers out of the process. I think a lot of young people who are not inherently Democratic, who are probably partisan in some ways,
right? So, there is a substantial chance that Trump could be president again. I think that the bigger question in my mind with regards to the Republican side for Trump is going to be the impact of these prosecutions. We have not felt the full impact of these prosecutions yet, not just in terms of Trump supporters, but in terms of Trump himself, because there's going to be an immense pressure that he's going to be personally feeling as Fannie Willis moves forward, as Jack Smith moves forward, as Letitia James moves forward, it's going to get more pressure and more pressure and more pressure. And you're going to start to see him, I think, it have some impact on his ability to be on the campaign trail. And that's what's going to impact, I think, his supporters, is that he's not going to be as effective as he previously has because of everything that he's going through. And the question for his supporters will be at that, if you can't deal with everything that's going on in your personal life, how are you going to deal with everything that's going to be going on in the country's life? And that's where you're going to see all of his competitors stepping up and certainly taking aim at him. And I listened, very keenly as Robert was taking shots at Tim Scott with regards to, all of his areas of his life, including his personal life. But one of the things that I think that people have to recognize is that very quietly, Tim Scott has brought over all of these mega donors from the Republican side to support him. They're giving tens of millions of dollars behind him, and that includes Trump supporters. So, he is really amassing some of the things that Republicans respect with returns to the to the wallet, to the size of the money that they have, the budget they have to run for the presidency. It's there. If you attack him on the cultural issues and you go after, he's a 58-year-old, single guy, whatever, the response is going to be, well, wait a minute, I thought you're supposed to be woke. What are you doing here? If you go on the religious side, he has that strong religious flavor that's there. He is probably the only one that's come from, 2, 3 different colleges that will focus on Christianity. So all of that he has in his bailiwick, in his quiver to pull out. So there's a lot that's there with Tim Scott that I just wouldn't look past him as brazenly and as passively as saying, I don't think he has a shot. He's a smiling black guy that says the white people are good. Maybe that's what the Republicans are looking for, is someone to say, you're not racist, you're okay, you're our guy. That's what I'm seeing here, Santita. That's my concern. That's what I see. On the Democratic side, I think that, Dwight is right on point that Biden and the way that he won last time, it was a combination of folks that simply didn't want Trump. So you had the Bernieites and many of the other factions that were there.
Wait, let's back up to the primary. The Democratic Party shut down Bernie. Because remember, we were asking him to leave the race. And then he said, no, wait for South Carolina. He said that for 2 months, which I was like, what is going on? What's going to happen in South Carolina? So, of course, we went to South Carolina. Kevin Gray, may you rest in peace. We said, what is going to happen down here? Well, we found out just before we left. Jim Clyburn, through all of his support behind him, you shut down any information that could have impacted him negatively. I mean, people didn't know about his stance on busing, for example, in South Carolina. When they found that out, they had voted early and they were hurt and shocked. They were like, what? Well, I didn't know that. It's Dwight, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. If I can co-sign Daryl's point real quickly, is Daryl, and when you think about it, in many ways, that's what Barack represented to the Democrats. Barack represented an opportunity for the Democrats to say, we're really not racist. We can put a reasonable black man in office that, that does not challenge our real power and our real values, and give the impression that we're past racism without having to really put anything else on the table but the demonstration that we will have a black man in office. So in many ways, your analysis about Tim Scott is not that different than the role Obama played on the Democratic side, when you think about it.
Daryl, your response?
Yeah, I'm saying amen. I mean, it's certainly right on point. If you can put a candidate up that lets white folks say, I feel good about voting for this black man and it's not going to hurt me, that it may even help me. There's a book called, what was it, The Price of the Ticket, right? Yeah. Where you want the black candidate up there, but what's the price that you pay? You're not going to get everything you want. So on the Republican side, they're going to put the black candidate up that they can support, that they can control, that they can manipulate. They got him already. He's one of the ones that we want because he's going to be good to us. He'll be better to us than our own could possibly be to us. He's going to do everything he can, and he's going to give us cover because we can now say we're not racist because, look, we supported him. We gave him tens of millions of dollars. We voted him in, and he won the primary. I think, twice right on. I agree with that analysis.
Okay. Robert, I'm almost afraid to ask you, what do you think?
Well, I agree with much of what Daryl and Dwight are saying about Tim Scott being controllable. He's got the sugar daddy, Larry Ellison, the founder of Oracle, who's pledged already to put $30 million behind his primary campaign and behind his race. And I think Tim Scott is running as basically a blank manila envelope, that whatever you decide to put inside of there is what he believes in. He doesn't have any policy positions. He doesn't have any personal resume. He doesn't have a family background or biography behind the kind of coming-of-age story of how a young Negro can rise to prominence despite being from a poor background. The same Clarence Thomas story, cut and pasted, with a South Carolina peach instead of a Georgia peach on it. But because of that, I think that if you look at the other black Republican candidates who have been successful, very similar story. Ben Carson had the same story. Herman Cain had the same story. Alan Keyes had the same story. And ultimately, they get to the point where if they become even slightly more successful than their handlers decided they were allowed to be, they immediately come in and crush it to earth. I think we all remember the Cain train from 2012. I worked on that campaign down in Eagles Landing, Georgia. And Herman Cain started rocketing up the primary field and looked like he was going to win. And his handlers figured out, hey, we told you to run to let people know we're not racist, not to win. And they started releasing white women like they were releasing doves at a parade or something. And then Herman Cain went away. And we saw the same thing happen when Ben Carson started making a little bit too much noise. The people who were in charge of him made sure to tamp him on back down because they want these people there, as Dwight said, to make it known that they're not racist, but they don't actually want them to win. They're meant to be a distraction. And that's why I think Tim Scott has a cap on what he's going to be allowed to do, unless he's willing to break out of that rubric, break out of that way of thinking, because at some point in time he's going to have to create some sorts of answers for, well, Tim Scott, what are you going to do about the ballooning price and the amount of corruption in the military contracting system? Tim Scott, what are you going to do to deal with the shortage of school buses that exist in America? Tim Scott, what are you going to do to deal with the epidemic that we have in this country when it comes to health care disparities and obesity and infant mortality and maternal mortality rates, etc.? Once he breaks free and starts answering those questions, that's when he will be in danger of actually upsetting the people who are financing him. And then we'll find out if he's going to be a real character or if he's just, a one-trick pony meant to appease white supremacists.
Well, Santita, it's an interesting point that Robert raises, because you got to remember when, and I can recall when President Obama was running, some of the initial references to him was that he was a blank slate, that he was unknown, and that they couldn't necessarily put him into positions and things along those lines and mark him. And that's what I hear you now saying with regards to Senator Scott, that you can't really mark him. I don't know that it's a negative that you don't know his positions right now, because on the strategy side of it, as a strategist, I would say, let me do my position development when I'm forced to do it. I'll have it in place, but if I don't have to roll it out right now, I ain't going to roll it out right now. If I can make money, if my candidate can roll in money, can bring in money and start to register and move up without my having to put positions up that might alienate him from any other of the electorate, that's what I want to do. And it's not until I'm forced to put my positions out there that I want to put them out there to be attacked. So, I think that Tim Scott has actually put himself in a very good position right now.
How so?
Sounds good to me.
How has he put himself in a good position? Yeah.
Oh, because he's in a position now where he's raising millions and millions of dollars. He's picking up some steam with regards to his bid for the presidency, all while not having to necessarily take positions that Robert's trying to lay out where he can be attacked. And if you can do that and gain ground without putting out information from which you can be attacked, you want to do that as long as you can. You know, that's what it's all about. It's about building the groundswell of support without giving anyone anything to attack you on. So that's where I think he is right now. He's taken some hardcore positions with regards to the Republican positions, right, on abortion and all those issues. Those are there. That's what they're looking for. Those bread and butter issues in the primary. That's what we're focused on, is the primary. And on the primary, I think that the big issues that are concerns to the Republicans, and particularly the culture war, as we've spoken of, and the war on abortion, right, or access to abortions. Tim Scott's taken those positions, and he's taken what's been popular positions with the core of the Republican Party. I don't know that he needs to go much beyond that for the primary right now. Not until he's forced to.
Now, Daryl. If you bring that base to Trump's base, if he acknowledges that white people are not racist because they like me, and Trump say, I like you too, therefore I'm not racist, and he's able to bring that base to the mega base, you got a formidable apparatus that you're running against. It's no different, again, than what Sister Harris did with black women. Is black women inherently didn't like Biden. But because they liked Harris and she pre-qualified Biden, they then put their support behind Biden. She was able to bring her base, which was a black female liberal base, to his base, which was a white conservative, a traditional base, and create a fairly formidable apparatus to go up against Trump, and they won. If you reverse that strategy, and Tim Scott is able to expand and bring his base to Trump's base, then you're dealing with two distinct but united bases that has a real chance to dominate that race.
I think you're absolutely right, and if you add to that, Dwight, what Santita was sort of teasing with a little earlier with regards to the African Americans and the Hispanics that were changing, and some of the younger voters that want to go Republican, and you throw in this Tim Scott element. Yeah, I think you start to really see, that being a very powerful and dominating combination that's potentially there. And I don't know of, say, perhaps Nikki Haley, any of the other people that have been mentioned on the Republican side that bring to the table what Tim Scott brings to a Trump Scott type ticket. I don't see that.
And I could see him doing that. Because it would be a game changer, and not just because of the color. Look, remember, it was Omarosa Montagald who put the HBCU office back in the White House, right? And she was able to get much money put back into HBCUs, which were pulled from HBCUs under the Obama administration. I mean, hello, I'm not breaking any news here. All that happened. And so I'm thinking that I think that the electorate is much more fluid now than it was even 10 years ago. Because also, these are really harsh times. I mean, we're going to be talking about these SNAP benefits that are being cut. People are going to walk around here hungry. And it will be the Hunger Games, but it won't be a game. So people are going to get hurt, and worse, Robert Patillo. I think we are moving into really, really treacherous territory, not just politically, but socially, culturally, interpersonally. Robert?
I agree with that, and I think that's part of the difficulty that Senator Scott's going to have, because you have a big portion of the Republican base right now that sees any efforts at diversity, equity, inclusion as being quote-unquote woke. And picking Tim Scott as vice president would go against everything Republicans are campaigning against right now. They would say, or Ron DeSantis would say, that that's cultural Marxism. That's the new thing that they're using. So this is part of the woke agenda that Tim Scott's not qualified to be vice president. They're just putting him there because of wokeness. I can hear that campaign ad taking place right now. And it goes against much of what Republicans have been running on for the last 2 election cycles. And when we talk about this expansion of Republicans into traditionally non-Republican areas, a big portion of it is based on these culture wars that a lot of people have just watched over the course of the last few years. As your friend from high school who used to go to rap concerts with you has slowly become a crazed MAGA and trying to figure out why. And it's because of, Pride Month. It's because of diversity training. It's because of the Black Little Mermaid and Black Spider-Man. It's because of this conceptualization that the conservative media cycle has been pushing to white communities that all of a sudden you're losing this country. You're no longer in charge. There are forces that are fighting against you. The woke agenda is making your kids gay. All those sorts of things. And that seems to be what Republicans are counting on. And it's been effective in taking people who policy-wise would be exceedingly progressive and turning them into MAGA voters. I was doing some research into this maybe about a month ago and found a group called Porn Stars for Trump, which I did not expect because it's that I'm not making this up. This is a group on Twitter of older porn stars, strippers, and sex workers who are big Trump supporters, and it's because of these culture war issues. So even though the Republican Party is against literally everything they've done in their entire lives, they've worked with gay and trans and minority people their entire careers. Because they've now reached kind of their early 40s, they become a little bit concerned about the way American society is changing. They've turned against everything they've done their entire lives to be against this woke agenda. I think that's what the Trumpers are counting on. But I don't see how you can comport that with also saying you're the anti-woke, where woke goes to die party, but also nominating somebody just to say, hey, look, we have a black guy, which will be wokeness.
You know what, everybody, stay right here. The Santita Jackson Show. We're going to continue this conversation for a few more minutes. I've come to the end of the show, but stay with us. I'm going to get some closing thoughts from Attorney Daryl Jones, Dr. D, Dwight McKee, and of course, Attorney Robert Patillo. And of course, Daryl Jones will be on WOLDC tomorrow. He and Barbara Arnwine at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And of course, Robert Patillo, you're going to be on with Roland tonight, you and Julianne Malveaux?
I'm on Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
I'm
okay.
on Wednesday with Roland.
Okay, fantastic. And of course, you're on Sundays on WAOK from 1 to 4 Eastern Standard Time. And Dwight McKee, I'm going to find this, or I'm going to get the link to your lecture because everybody, it's something you don't want to miss. And we're going to have to bring him on one day just to help us to understand, get a little history lesson. I think you're going to love it. You are going to love it. And we're going to do some of that at the Rainbow Push International Conference, July 15th through the 19th. You don't want to miss that either. We're going to be talking about history at our reunion because we need to understand how we got here. I bet you many of you didn't know. Uncle Mickey, you know what Royal Warren, who was one of the top musicians at our church at Fellowship, who toured with the Rolling Stones, for example, and brilliant musician. Dwight, I did not know that during one of those marches, I think in Gage Park or out in Cicero, my father was actually stabbed with Dr.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I didn't know that. It was Uncle Mickey who gave me that information. I was like, he was what? He was like, yeah. Oh, yeah. He said, people don't know what they don't know. This is not glamorous work, and nobody expected to come out of this alive. Right? And you know that. And we lived that way. Like every time I saw my father, Mickey was there. And I tell you, I read an interview with my brother, and he said, every time he'd take him to the airport, sometimes we'd all have to run to the restroom and cry and pull ourselves together and come out because we were like, this might be it. And we lived like that literally day to day to day to day. But praise the Lord, we're here. But you know what? No matter what, you accept God's will and you keep it moving. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Can't wait to be with you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. God bless. Dwight and Robert and Daryl. I mean, help me to make some sense of what we've been talking about here. Don't want to extend it too much. I've got to talk to Robert, and then we have to push on. But so where is the race?
Well, if I can just say this again on Daryl's point, I think at some point, and on Robert's point too, I think that the economic issues are going to overwhelm the cultural issues.
Really?
And what's going to happen is prediction is that as this Brexit thing, and as Saudi Arabia is already
the de-dollarization. Is that what are you talking about, the de-dollarization and how that's going to impact us? Okay.
And Saudi Arabia is already cut the oil, the amount of oil they put out. They are already making in the Middle East, China and Iran, Iraq, those countries who have been at war. China is making peace with them. Russia's tied into them now. And I think at some point, Trump's relationship with Putin is going to be seen as a positive rather than as a negative. Because as America gets put more and more out of the loop, and it's going to need an entree to the essential things that make this economy work, then this Ukrainian thing they're going to see as a liability and want that resolved. And Trump's relationship with Putin, they're going to see as probably the only way to resolve that. And the need is going to be as such that if we want to stay in the game at all with the world's resources and oil, et cetera, we're going to have to find peace with that. We're going to have to bite our lip and make peace with that. And Trump is positioned to do that much better than Biden is.
Well, you know what? I watched Fareed Zakaria on CNN. I think he's fascinating. And I have to tell you, Dwight and Robert and Daryl, I would advise you, I would urge you to listen to his commentary yesterday. He spoke to what we've been talking about for a long time. You know, I've been saying, you know, it's very interesting that former colonies are now ascendant and their colonizers are struggling. And that's what he spoke about yesterday. He said now these people are negotiating different relationships with the West, with America, with Europe. They're like, no. That's why I told you all at the beginning Ukraine was not going to work. I said, Africa's not going to sign up for this. Neither is India. China's not going to be in on this. That's more than half the world, y'all, and that has already happened. And now we're watching de-dollarization. We had Congressman Jackson on here, Dwight and Robert and Daryl. He said, no, we've already been negatively impacted by this set debt ceiling fight because we've wreaked havoc with economies all over the world, and now these people are moving to the BRICS nations. They're moving off the dollar. I mean, Robert, what do you see about that?
Well, I think this is why we're seeing the continued push for the U.S. interest in Ukraine, because Biden is one of the last few old school Cold Warriors from that generation still in existence on Earth in reality. Him and Putin very much are cut from that same cloth of that 1970s, 1980s struggle between the East and West, and we're seeing the Ukrainian counteroffensive start right now. In the Donbass region, they kind of sank into Bakhmut, where they basically turned it into a meat grinder. It looked like the Battle of Grozny in 1998. The way that the city was destroyed with old Russian techniques and strategies. But by having that meat grinder, they went through something like 120,000 Russian troops just to take the city of Bakhmut. And now we're seeing the Ukrainian counteroffensive appear to begin in the southeast. So they're able to breach the Russian lines, cut off their supply chains, and then retake Crimea, push Russia out of Ukrainian territory, and then sue for peace in that situation. Biden will count that as a resounding victory, and that will show the world and on the entire world stage of, look, you get behind Russia if you want, and this is what happens to you. You get behind China if you want, and this is what happens to you. And I think that the message is being stood internationally as we no longer have a game show host as president. Y'all ain't going to be running these reindeer games on us like y'all did the last 4 years when Trump was in office, which is where we will start seeing these things metastasize in the multipolar world. While we were in America doing this misguided and idiotic, quote unquote, America first foreign policy, where the entire world felt like they could just get over on us and Mike Pompeo and some of these kind of ridiculous figures we had in our national security apparatus. We're seeing a reestablishment of U.S. Hegemony globally. Even with Vice President Harris's trip to Africa, we've seen Secretary Blinken be far more active on the international stage with forging international agreements. I think President Biden is depending on those victories and the continued strength in the face of mounting struggles of the economy to push him over the top. President Biden wasn't 82, but he was 52 years old. There wouldn't be a race. This would be one of those Reagan 1984 landslide type races, given the state of what he's done versus the people he's running against. President Biden is trying to defeat Putin. Ron DeSantis is trying to defeat Mickey Mouse. It's not the same stage they're playing on. But that's why I think President Biden is working harder on this strongman image and the defeat of Russia, because I think he believes that will be his ticket to re-election.
Will it be? I mean, can he benefit from, say, the debt ceiling deal from this because he continues to push bipartisanship? I mean, what do you think what's the end game here?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what Biden is doing. He's reinforcing his brand, which is the middle-of-the-road Joe, the Joe from Scranton, Pennsylvania. He's making sure people remember, I am not one of these wide-eyed liberals from the coast. I'm not Bernie. I'm not AOC. I'm going to have some centrist policies. I can do the one thing that no one else in American politics can do, which is bring both parties together on big issues. I just got Marjorie Taylor Greene and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to vote the same way on the same bill on the debt ceiling. I was able to push through the $1.5 trillion Inflation Reduction Act. I pushed through the $1.7 trillion infrastructure deal. I pushed through the Respect for Marriage Act with a Republican Congress that's increasingly anti-gay and anti-interracial marriage. I pushed through a $3.5 trillion infrastructure bill. I've done more to defend Europe than any president since perhaps FDR, and perhaps since any person since Churchill and Charlemagne. I've set up U.S. bases all across the South Pacific and Indo-Pacific in order to contain China. I've cut gas prices by $1 since last year. Unemployment is at 3.4%. We created 350,000 jobs last month alone. And you guys want to turn things back over to a game show host and a guy fighting Mickey Mouse. Get out of my face.
And Robert, if I can say it real quick, Daryl, he did all of that. Everything you said is absolutely correct, Robert. And he still polled it at 40%. 38% of those bad days. Which means that there's no more rabbits. There's no more rabbits in that hat, dog. If he's done all that and still can't get 40%, over 40%, there are no more rabbits in that hat.
You don't think so? I mean, I mean, anybody.
Yeah, I think the problem
is said and still can't get 40%. What is there left for him to do?
Well, I think the issue is, as we said throughout, I can't be Biden's best surrogate if he ain't paying me. He has a completely ridiculous press apparatus where they still don't. We are 15 months out from the general election. We still can't get Biden officials on Black Talk Radio. We still don't see the vice president out there beating the bushes and stomping on cable news. I knew things were bad this weekend when they were talking about the debt ceiling deal, and instead of having the vice president out there, they pulled Pete Buttigieg out of both balls to send him out there because he's the only person they trust to carry the administration's message in public. So if no one is going to actually say what I can say about the president's record, and nobody knows about it, then you're going to have the prevailing narrative of an old man who falls down and ain't doing nothing, which is what the prevailing zeitgeist is. So until he can get a real communication staff around him, you can do all you feel like. If no one knows about it, it doesn't matter.
Well, all I can say is that with this counteroffensive that the Ukraine is doing against Russia, and if they don't win, Russians take them out, then it's over for Biden. Because then Trump is going to jump in and say, I told y'all we should have settled this on the front end all of the time. And Putin, if I come to town and shake your hand and smile at you, will you stop killing these people? And Putin says, yes, only you, Mr. Trump, only you. This thing is over.
I mean, Daryl, you have anything to add?
Not really, Santita. I think that, certainly I agree with both Dwight and Robert with regards to, if Russia takes out Ukraine, then that leaves, Biden has no arrows in his quiver. There's nothing that he has to try to go in and now explain, number one, to the American people why we have spent so much money in the Ukraine, and we are now in a position where our gas and oil prices is going to be off the chart, right? And everything, and the relationship is going to be completely strained. It's over on that point because the only person that Putin will want to talk to will be a Trump or a Trump-type person. And so, I completely agree on that. And I still think, that going into the election season, most of the time, voters are focused on domestic issues unless we're in a war. And we're not in a war. So, that generally wouldn't be the issue. It becomes an issue on the foreign relations plane, I think, because, we always say that, there are no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, just permanent interests. And that permanent interest for all Americans is gas and oil and the prices that they're paying at the pumps for existence, as well as their other needs and money security. And if the money security issues are shaken because of this Ukraine and Russia stuff, then I think it's going to generate, and it's certainly going to be a major issue for President Biden to have to deal with. And if there is this offensive that takes Ukraine out and Russia becomes truly beholden, that's going to be, I think, a major game changer. I agree with them on that.
Dwight? So how do we wrap this up? What should we be looking for? Because now all the polls say that the major issue in this campaign will be abortion, reproductive rights for women. And I saw Nikki Haley last night, trying to break dance out of it. But I'm like, no, sis, you're not going to be able to do this. People want to know definitively where you are. Mm-hmm.
That's because the prices went down to $3, $4 a barrel.
Okay.
A gallon. Back up to $7 a gallon. Folks will be talking about abortion. Believe me, that won't be the discussion. That discussion will be help. Help. Whoever can help, please help. And that's when everything that Daryl just outlined comes into play. That the dynamics of what's happening in the Middle East and the dollar and the oil prices and America's lack of power to be able to change that dynamic. Their relationship with Africa, China, everybody and all the colonial powers are lining up against the West. And you're going to see a change in tone and in attitude when the real issues become how we going to become bread and oil. That's my analysis. That's my prediction, actually.
So, you guys, where do you see this going? So do you think that de-dollarization, what do you think are going to be the big issues? You said, bread and butter issues, how much gas is. And so then, therefore, that's going to call Ukraine into question. Is that what you're saying? And a whole host of other issues behind that.
I'm saying if they don't win in the Ukraine, even if it's a stalemate, and people look at and there's no deliverables from Ukraine, all the Ukraine fight has done is serve to do is to alienate the Chinese and the Russians. And we're still not just paying for the war, but we're paying for the consequences of the war, directly and indirectly. One through direct money given but secondly, through the impact that the inflation is going to have on the economy from the war, people are going to rethink these relationships. And so if there has not been, in all of his doing for Biden, a turnaround in people's thinking about him, again, he's still polling lower than any other candidate, any other president has in history. And that's tied, even the fact he's dealt with the ceiling effectively, quote unquote, is that the international incidents, once they turn into buddy incidents, is going to run right back to what Reagan asked Carter, is, are you better off today than you were when this guy got in the White House? And even though Reagan had none of the things, all of the issues that Robert just outlined, he had no track record. He was the governor for 8 years, but he had no track record, no portfolio, no demonstration of a capacity to do anything other than act. When he raised that question, look at your bank account and see what this thing has done for you, it was a different ball game. And I think that's the question Trump is going to ask Biden. And it's going to be the resounding no. And it's going to be a different kind of race.
Well, you guys, I think we'll have to continue to watch out. Look out for this, because I won't see where. I think it's going to be a very interesting race. I don't think there's anything set in stone except, I would say, the predominance of Donald Trump. And this is not, I think he's strong with people for a whole lot of to them. They need him for a whole lot of reasons, Dwight and Daryl and Robert. They like him for a whole lot of reasons. They like his swagger. Some people do. They like his confidence. Some people do. Some people like, the fact that they think he's speaking truth to power. It's all of that. It's all of that. Everybody, please don't discount anything and pay attention to it all. Pay attention to the Republican race. Somebody's going to be president. Pay attention to all of it. Pay attention to all of it. I'm telling you, pay attention to all of it.
I'm almost guarantee you that his opening refrain is going to be, I can end this war and get us out of this mess. That's where he's going to start. And he's going to get a lot of attention, positive attention when he takes that position. I can deal with Putin. I can end this war. I can get us out of this mess. I can have them commit to a legitimate trade relationships, because I understand that much better than Biden. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes us great, is the economy is what makes us great, not the cultural issues. I'd like to hear what Daryl has to say, though, if he can, before he leaves.
Daryl, you still there? Well, no, but I think it's all really fascinating, quite frankly. I really do. I think this is going to be a very interesting race. I really do. Don't sleep. This is going to be interesting. Muy interesante. I promise you. So think about it, everybody. I love you. I love you, Dwight. So excited for you. Cannot wait to. Should I call Gregory to get the link? Because people are calling me. They want to see it. Okay. All right. I'll reach out to him right away. Yeah.
All right, Robert. Thanks.
Robert, you have any final words?
As always. I think for me, I think it's going to be this question of as I said, for me, I see the race as being a race between Joe Biden and Father Time. That's really the primary. That's going to be the general election also. Joe Biden, regardless of everything that he's done, the entire debt ceiling compromise was overshadowed by him stumbling over a sandbag. And as those things continue to happen, to continue to mount, Father Time is undefeated. And if people see him as being a feeble old man who's just ain't got it anymore, then it's going to be a very different race. The same with President Trump. President Trump's not running against the primary field, he's running against the law. If the law don't catch up with him by November of 2024, then he's going to be the Republican nominee, and we're going to have a race on our hands. I think everyone else is running just for the scraps of that. That in case either Father Time or the law wins, they want to make sure they are there to be the alternative, and that's really the way the race is shaping up. It's those two races, and then everybody else is just working for the scraps.
Well, Susan Garner says, people, what are you going to do for me is what most people want to know. They don't care about Ukraine. I hear you. I mean, they tried to get everybody whipped up around here about that. That has not worked. Laura says Trump will lose no matter what. His lies have escalated. Let me get this. To this point where how many people still believe. So woke. Okay. But all these folks have, a lot of them have done a fair amount of lying, and they've not been truthful. I mean, boy, oh boy, oh boy, karma's a beast. Donald Trump is just hated. And it's just, most of us don't even know what he's been accused of. And
P.T. Barnum, who Donald Trump reminds me most of, said it in a memorable way that there's a sucker born every minute. Which means if you miss this one, just wait 60 seconds. It'll be another one. Come along.
Don't say that, Dwight. Did you say a sucker born? But that's true. He said it's a sucker born every minute. Every minute. Oh, are you saying we've been suckered here? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying?
And people think that, if we think that people don't care more about his moral record than what he's going to bring to their economic reality, it's a understanding of how this country works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people don't care about that.
It like this because he's a historian. But when you think about what was happening in Germany after the Weimars inflated the money, the last person you would think that people would get swept up in, because he was short and a little nutty and looked a little nutty in the eyes, a little cross, a little short beard, the mustache. The last person that folk should have been caught up would have been Adolf Hitler. Mm. But when he started talking about those economic realities and restoring Nazi Germany to its former greatness, and dealing with what had happened to them at Versailles, he became the new president of that country and ultimately the dictator of that country. People think much more, are concerned much more about what's in it for them than the morality of anything beyond that. That's my opinion. I'd like to hear you close on that, Robert. What would you say about that? Because you know all about
absolutely. Just further corollary. So for the people who don't understand what Dwight was saying, when Hitler talked about the Third Reich, the First Reich, he was talking about the Holy Roman Empire. Not the Roman Empire, Julius Caesar, but the Holy Roman Empire founded by Charlemagne and then later on by later on it became a Germanic empire after Charlemagne's grandchildren couldn't get along. As the former Frankish possessions of West Francia became France, Central Francia became Northern Italy, East Francia became Germany, and then they went to battle for 1,000 years, basically to inherit their father's or their grandfather's legacy. There's a whole interesting story around that. But the second German Empire, the Second Reich, was the German Empire of the mid-19th century under Otto von Bismarck, prior to German unification in 1870. Do you remember the German Empire at that time was the Confederation of the Rhine that was set up by Napoleon, as well as the Prussian state and the Austrian Empire, and then that's the empire that went into World War One. To prohibit favorites to win. They lost. They were imposed all the punitive measures of the Treaty of Versailles. And when Dwight talks about inflation during the Weimar Republic, we were talking about it took a wheelbarrow full of German Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread. We're talking about Zimbabwe levels of inflation, Venezuela levels of inflation took place. And when Hitler and the Nazis came to power, they were only one of many competing political ideologies that were rising during that period of time, because when a nation's in crisis, everything sounds like a good idea. And in reality, the Western powers, the U.S., France, Britain, all actually kind of supported the Nazis at the time, because their biggest fear was communism spreading, because you just had the Russian Revolution during World War One and Stalin coming to power. So by the 1930s, the bigger concern was the spread of communism, because communism was an anti-imperial movement. Communism was an anti-monarchical movement. Remember, all of the principles in World War One, the king of Russia, the king of Germany, and the king of England were all cousins. Their grandmother was Queen Victoria, and there was actually what's said by Kaiser Wilhelm that if Queen Victoria was still alive, World War I would have never happened, because it was a squabble between monarchical powers over possessions. The Communist Revolution sought to overthrow all of the European monarchies and to bring down that entire system. So when the U.S. and when Britain and France and all the other colonial powers saw this question of Hitler, somebody who was upholding the system of empire, versus Stalin, somebody who wanted to destroy the system of empire, Madison Square Garden was sold out with Nazis prior to the war. There was a brown shirt movement in London and England at that period of time. So to Dwight's point, extremism is always easy to say you were against it later on. Down the line, you won't find anybody who said they were in favor of the Nazis now, because things didn't turn out well. But at the time, it was a very popular movement. Lindbergh was a Nazi sympathizer. Ford was a Nazi sympathizer. Coco Chanel, Chanel Persons, she was having sex with multiple high-ranking Nazis. Hugo Boss designed the Nazi uniforms.
And Americans did not want to be involved in the war. They said, I don't care what's happening over there. No. Joseph Kennedy, that's why he lost his ambassadorship to the court of St. James. Because he was like, you don't need to do this with these people. Ooh.
Because in reality, Europe was always at war during that period of time. You had World War II, you had the Franco-Prussian War, you had the Crimean War, you had the Napoleonic War. That's just what they did, and Americans had no taste for it. But I think to Dwight's point about the economic issues, when people are desperate economically, as Germany was, and then when you take the U.S. at that time in the Great Depression, those Nazi ideas, ideologies, you'll be surprised how many folks' great-grandparents, if you open up something in the attic, you're going to find a bunch of Nazi stuff. And so when we look at Trump today, Trump is counting on a very scared populace, a populace that is xenophobic, that is jingoistic, that is by its very nature racist, by its very nature sexist, by its very nature homophobic, and being able to harness that culture war along with an economic what Hitler did, and then turn that into a political and governing majority. And I don't think any of us can rightfully say that won't happen, because we're seeing it happen before our eyes. This is why I say Trump's only competition is the law. Because if Trump is not in jail, he's going to beat the entire Republican field by 30 points. And there's going to be another rematch of 2020.
Well, Daryl says, I cannot believe we have a man that's being under investigation for various crimes, he writes, we're sitting here talking about him running for president again. The average person would be in prison right now. So everyone who ever been in prison should still be able to get a good job after serving time. So having a criminal record should no longer be a barrier to securing a good job, et cetera, et cetera. But Daryl, I've told you, getting being under investigation, having an indictment, even going to prison is a political act. Some people are protected, some people are incarcerated. It's so, on one level, I look at these charges, and most of us don't even know what they are. We say he's a liar, he's this. You don't even know why you don't like him. We've been programmed by the media not to like him. And you got to be careful with that, because that can happen to any and everybody. Now, his personality does not help, but it is what it is. And you need to understand that. No, Daryl? I'm sorry, not Daryl. I mean, of course, Robert, I know it's you.
And Hitler had...
That is Dwight.
Oh, Dwight, I'm sorry.
About that.
What you say?
Yeah, Hitler was in prison. Robert, that was the most profound analysis I've ever heard. I hope you put that before I copy of that. But Hitler was in prison before he became the president and the dictator and the Fuhrer. Prison in this situation can become a positive rather than a negative. If people receive you as being there for political reasons.
Let me tell you something. In South Africa, if you have not been imprisoned, particularly over a certain period of time during the apartheid moment, people look at you suspiciously. You mean to tell me you haven't taken a hit? Oh no, you must be in bed with the power structure. Oh, okay, and we'll deal with you accordingly. I'm just saying. That being in prison, getting in trouble, if you will. That's why John Lewis called it good trouble. Because if you are not under investigation, if the FBI ain't got no file on you, you ain't doing nothing. Trust and believe. No. My father often says in the Bible, he gets it from the Bible, beware when no one says anything unkind or negative about you. That means you ain't doing nothing. So, I mean, we have to understand that. We really, really, really have to understand how political it is for you to be indicted, how political it is for you to be removed from office, how political it is for you to, just for you to be in trouble. I mean, even we're finding, as we find out more, we're finding out more and more about the real reasons behind Nixon being removed from office. It has nothing to do with someone putting a Band-Aid over a lock at the Watergate complex, and a black security officer found it in the middle of the night. And after Frank Wills found it, we just forgot all about him. He couldn't get another job. Remember that? Come on, y'all. I'm just saying, we need to watch this play out. And if you think Trump is going to jail, Robert, I don't know, because I think that all HE double hockey sticks would break loose if he goes to jail. I mean, you wouldn't be able to control his people, and his people are not who you think they are. They're not. I mean, there are a whole lot of people who, for a whole lot of reasons, identify with him. It is what it is. I think we need to understand that.
I agree, but also I think that what we're seeing, because I follow almost all conservatives on Twitter, just because I like pain. And what I've noticed is an amazing lack of loyalty to Trump. The people who were willing to go to prison for Trump, now that it looks like he's weakened and it looks like he's going to go to jail, they've turned against him at record rates. One of my good friends, Jenna Ellis, she was the one up there with Rudy Giuliani when Rudy's hair started leaking. She almost lost her law license, was disbarred defending Trump in the last election. She's behind DeSantis now. Kayleigh McEnany, the former press secretary for President Trump, she debased herself completely for Trump. Now she's criticizing him, and President Trump is talking junk about her too. So I think what President Trump is counting on is this idea that he's now Goldman Sachs. He's too big to fail for American politics, and that the Republican Party and the prosecutors and everybody else will come to the realization of, well, if we do imprison President Trump before he goes into custody, look at what's happening in Pakistan right now, or President Khan, where he's been imprisoned and taken away. We'll see something very similar here with a MAGA insurgency potentially becoming a domestic terrorism threat to the United States of America, endangering the future of the republic. So with Trump, we are moving into an area of politics that sees what America is able to handle. We have to look at models from overseas because we've never had an insurgent like President Trump. We've never had a former dictator coming back to office, and we've never had the type of political movement behind him where these people believe in Trump more than country. So we should be, if they're going to defeat Trump in the primary, we got to make sure you kill him dead, not physically but metaphorically. Just like with the second impeachment, when we said, well, you have to convict him in the Senate or he'll never go away. They didn't convict him, and that's what put us where we're at today.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think that's. I think that he is going to be just fine. I really do, because also remember, a lot of the people who led the January 6th insurgency, many of them were intelligence. That's come out. So, I mean, you have to, because I'm like you, Robert. I follow a lot of conservatives, and not because I've been on Fox News. No, I want to know what people are thinking. I have been trained to, Dwight, to try to understand the argument globally. That is to understand everybody's point so that you can know when you're in a debate where your opponent is coming from. If you don't study them, you're dead in the water. You better study someone. That was one of the things that they said at Fox News: before you sit down for an interview with anyone, look at them, study them. They emphasized that. I appreciate that. Study them, understand how when they take a pause, how they move things around, how they use their personality, don't use their personality. I mean, all of that. We need to understand how politics really works. Dr. King stayed under the investigation of the IRS throughout his public life, all 13 years of it. They were always threatening to put him in jail. J. Edgar Hoover tried to get him to kill himself. He tried to destroy his marriage. And he never stopped. Was Dr. King wrong? No. But that is how power functions. Power protects itself. And power will make your life a living hell if they can. And if you decide to defy power and say, I don't care what you do, I'm going to keep on going, they will try to destroy you. And if they don't try to destroy you, they will go after your children. It's interesting that royalty, these dynasties go on. It's interesting that the powerful dynasties are allowed to go on, no matter what kind of troubles their children have had. But have you seen that same kind of track record with the children of the civil rights movement, whose parents were leaders in it? No. You need to figure out why that is. Right, Dwight?
Correct.
They went after folks' children. That's what they do. They don't want Dr. King's children coming back. No. They don't want Jesse Jackson's children coming back. No. So you need to understand what the game is, everybody. Understand the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game, and understand the game. Understand it. Understand. You can, President Bush, God bless him, George W. Bush, he had a youth that was full of folly and adventure and a lot of pain. He had some challenges with his father. I'm not going to slam him. People are human, and all kinds of things happen in your life and in our lives. That's the way it was. And with all of his misadventures, he became president, and he was protected. His wife accidentally killed a guy. And she was in a car accident when she was in high school. You didn't hear about that during the campaign? I'm not mad at anybody. I'm just saying people get protected. And some people get thrown under the bus. And the people who get thrown under the bus are the people who fight for you. Think about that. Think about it. And I repeat, if you are in South Africa and you have not had trouble with the police, people who are revolutionaries eye you with suspicion and derision because they say you must be the police. Because I don't know anyone who is tangled with this system, who the system has not tried to destroy. Am I telling a little bit of truth, Dwight?
And the first thing on the resume of Mandela was that he had been in jail 27 years.
Oh, yeah.
That was a highlight of his resume.
Absolutely. And Walter Sisulu. And you just keep on, I mean, that's the thing. No, you in South Africa, you still want to be Steve Biko's child. Not the first black billionaire. First, no, they don't want any of that. They want to know, where in times of challenge, where did you stand? That is the question. Susan, you say that abortion is going to be the issue. Women are going to make the difference in this election. I think it's going to be a real big one. I think, though, inflation, Susan, and I'm going to get the hotel information for the convention to you and to everyone. I think, though, bread and butter issues are going to reign supreme. I tell you, I think about the woman, the cashier in the grocery store every day. I was talking with my brother, Congressman Jackson, about this yesterday. He said, that really affected you, didn't it? I said, Jonathan, when I turned around and looked at that store and saw all of that food as I was paying my bill, and I said, she can't go back in. I'm going to go back to that store and try and find her and give her a little something today. I'm going to do that. Because, I mean, I'm telling you, Robert and Dwight, that broke my heart. It just broke my heart. I said, this is too cruel. That this woman can't get anything to eat. Yes?
These stores are closing, many of them in the black community and in some parts of the black community, because they've been robbed. Because they've been robbed. People are so desperate and so hungry that the new major crime is just people coming off the street, stealing food and running out the store. And the stores can't sustain this. As this bread and butter issue gets more and more serious, and more people need more and more bread and butter, you're going to see people, abortion would be almost an afterthought, other than for maybe 5% or 10% of the population. I can say that to you, great authority.
Well, everybody, the great oracle has spoken. So you know what? Think about that. Think about it, everybody. Think about all of this. What did she say in All About Eve? Fasten your seatbelts. We're in for a bumpy ride. And that is it. That is it. That is it. Fasten your seatbelts. We are in for a bumpy ride. It's going to be real interesting, y'all. Real interesting. So think about that. Think about that. Think about it. So I love you all. And Dwight McKee, I'm going to call Greg so I can get this link. Okay? And then I'm going to have you on.
And Robert.
Oh, Robert?
Robert, please do something with your announcement that you just made. Can you put that on tape?
Well, actually, it's on
it out to us? Sure.
It's on the podcast. I'll send it to you. Dwight.
Great.
Okay, and I'll try to remember what I said.
I'll send it to you, too. Oh, Linear Bob, you said that story is breaking your heart, too. Oh, just very quickly, Effie Rolfe, legend of radio and media here. I went to the grocery store last week and was just picking up some odds and ends. Nothing like fish, meat, I couldn't even find the watermelon I wanted. So, I said, okay, I'll get some crackers, I'll get some tortilla chips and things like that kind of fill in some of the things that I eat. My stomach's been off, so I need like salty things. And maybe too much information, but there you go. And as I was checking out, I was dismayed to find with all these little things that I bought that it was like $67, almost $70. I mean, that's like, what? That's like 2/3 of the way to $100. I'm like, whoa, what did I buy? What's going on? Well, she said to me, she said, ma'am, I used to get $350. I used to get $350, but now I get $250 a month. I said, how are you making it? She said, from day to day, I'm pinching pennies and I've got a teenage son. I thought about this woman standing at that cashier, ringing up all of our food. And it just broke my heart. I said, this is cruel. You're cutting back SNAP benefits, but you're not cutting back the price of food, the price of rent. This is awful. And people are playing games with folks. Playing games. And this is an awful thing. And yeah, it broke my heart, and I think about her every day. Every single day. I'm going to go back to that store, and I'm going to look for her. Because it broke my heart. And you know what? I'm going to tell you. And because Dwight knew my parents in those days, and you met my parents in salad days, quite frankly, because before we got to Chicago, my parents' first standalone home was in a project in Greensboro, North Carolina. When I was born, my parents didn't have a home. We lived with the Halseys. And all I could think, Dwight and Robert, was the night that my father spoke at the Democratic Convention was my birthday in 1984. And we had my birthday party at midnight the night before because we knew that, my father was writing the speech, and I didn't expect him to, make, we're going to have a birthday party for her. No, I wasn't going to do that, but my father wanted, he's the first person always to acknowledge my birthday in my life, always. And he wanted to make sure that I had a surprise birthday party because he did not want me to, he wanted to acknowledge my birthday, God bless him. And all I could think as he walked to that lectern, and I looked over my shoulder, and I saw my grandma Tibby, who's my great-grandmother. I saw my grandma Helen. I saw my grandmother Gertrude and her husband. And I said, wow, look at God in a generation. This night, 21 years ago, we were homeless. Whew, Dwight. Makes me emotional now thinking about it, I said, but because my parents were faithful and they kept on going, they just kept on going, God was able to bless them. They never stole from anyone. They just tried to serve people, and God continued to bless them. They didn't have to pay for us to go to college because each of us earned full scholarships to college. God just continued to bless us. God built a shield of protection around us. We were able to stay together as a family. And no matter what, my parents' commitment outweighed everything. So whatever pains and disappointments they had, they kept their marriage and their family together. All that raced through my mind that night. And when I go see them now, that races through my mind. But on that night in particular, I thought about that. That's because there was a time when people didn't know their name. There was a time. And maybe that's why I think about that woman. Because I don't know who her son's going to be. I don't know how God's going to use her. I don't know if there's something I can say to her that might encourage her maybe to run for the school board. I don't know. She might plant a seed in her son. I don't know. That's why every encounter that we have with each one of us in this human journey that we're on, treat each encounter as holy, everybody. It's sacred. You don't know how you can lift someone. Don't lower anyone. You don't have the right to do that. My father said you do not have the right to look down on anyone unless you're extending your hand to lift them up. You don't have the right to do that. It's not right to do that. Lift people up. Save somebody's life today. Do it. Just do it. I'm a miracle, you're right, Laura, but we're all miracles. I'm my parents' surprise child, okay? But my parents fought for me to get here, and my grandparents were not thrilled. My grandmother sat and told me this really a lot right before she died. She talked about, the pain, the disappointment. She said, look, because we were trying to get out of poverty and I was trying to get my children through. But look at God. Look at God. Look at God. So whatever you're going through, everybody, just keep going, keep growing, and keep your head lifted up to the hills from whence cometh your help. I promise you, God will never fail you. God will never fail you. God can do anything but fail you. God can do anything but be cruel. God's too kind for that. God is too wise to make a mistake. So in this confused world, no, God ain't making mistakes. We are. Think about that. I love you, everybody. I love you, Dwight. I love you, Robert. Robert, I'll call you shortly. And I am out of here, everybody. Boom. I'm out. I love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Have a great one. Hope you enjoyed the show. Like and share it. Like and share it. Like and share it. Please, everybody. Love you. Bye-bye.